Hey there! This video is a measured response to Lucid, a Team Fortress 2 YouTuber that has received quite the notoriety over the last couple of years. His video, The Untold Story of TF2's Capture the Flag, is constructed in a fashion I find so disagreeable that I felt the need to publicly critique it. This video is an example of several severe flaws in the process of making YouTube videos today, especially in the Team Fortress 2 circles. Think of it as a microcosm of larger issues that other more popular creators possess en masse. Lucid lies, ignores nuances that would otherwise assist a better understanding of the source material, and takes scenarios and quotes severely out of context. All of this creates a video that is emotionally charged and severely incoherent down to the very foundation. This response video is made in the hopes that the people who listened to Lucid will allow their beliefs a moment of pause and view a more thorough understanding of the material discussed from a perspective that does not require emotional pandering to mean something. In short, the goal is to provide an objective assessment of Lucid's arguments and see how well he argues his beliefs while also analyzing the reality of what he describes. This will be my longest video that isn't an unedited gameplay session or interview, so without further ado, welcome to the video.
This is Jeremy, your average, everyday, fresh TF2 player. He just got his first desktop computer for Christmas, and he was ready to play some games. So he eagerly scrolled through Steam's free-to-play section to find Team Fortress 2. It's a game he's never played before, but one he's been following for years. So, clearly having nothing else to do, he downloads the game and gives it a try.
It appears that the narrative through line for this video will tell a story about a fictional TF2 player. On my first viewing, I assumed that the character of Jeremy would be a conduit through which Lucid can share relatable experiences about the nature of the game, specifically within Capture the Flag's method of play. I'm sure that the experience of being new to the game is relatable to many. From my memory, I built my computer with a friend 3 years ago specifically to play the modern Doom games. But after rediscovering the Meet the Team videos on YouTube, I looked up TF2, found that it was free, and gave it a go as my first true online multiplayer experience. After playing all the classes, I chose to stick with Scout and Sniper most frequently. Scout's weapons resembled a double-barreled shotgun that I was so used to seeing after playing Doom, and Sniper offered the skill of long-range precision that was surprisingly copacetic with Scout's aiming skills. My hours have drastically changed over the few years I've played this game, but I still find my best performance on these two classes. So Lucid has started off strong with creating a very vague yet adaptable protagonist for his little story. Since each player has different experiences, whether they were shown the game or found the game on their own, what skills they possess from previous games, what they perceive TF2 as it is in its current state, and many other such factors, how he paces the script from this point on is incredibly important.
Let's do it!
And that's led him here, playing a match of Capture the Flag on 2 Fort. The chaos, the violence, the visual noise, it's nonsensical, it's insane, and it's what will have Jeremy hooked over the next several hours, eyes glued to the screen, sucked into the world of Team Fortress 2. Jeremy's story represents many other players' first experiences with the game, thrust into a match of Capture the Flag as their first impression of what TF2 is. This game mode has been the hook that's grabbed a large amount of TF2 players over its history and never let them go. Which is shocking because, by all accounts, it's a horribly designed game mode with a whole host of issues.
I'm operating under the assumption that by following the game for years, Lucid meant watching YouTube videos and observing the online discourse. I certainly hope the latter is not the case, since it is quite presently a minefield of dishonesty. But even watching a certain number of YouTube videos would give Jeremy the idea that there are plenty of other maps to start on, and perhaps even prefer. Also, small spoiler alert, it would mean that certain information and details Lucid later presents as brand new to Jeremy's mind wouldn't actually be brand new at all. Returning to the theme of the script, this is where the intention of the narrative becomes clear to first-time viewers. Lucid will be telling the story of Jeremy to represent other players' first experiences with TF2, while using that story as a conduit for his criticisms of the game mode itself. In essence, this is an agenda-driven narrative aimed at further proving, or at least bolstering, the hopefully objective criticisms he has about Capture the Flag. Already the hasty generalizations begin with claiming that, by all accounts, CTF is poorly designed for a number of reasons. This is ridiculous, since this is obviously impossible for all accounts to agree upon. For example, I believe Capture the Flag is quite well designed. Teams fighting for an objective to return to their side of the map makes for a variety of tactics and decisions between each player and team that can make for organized or chaotic fights, or even both at the same time. It reflects the game played by many in real life, of which I played extensively while I was a child with friends and family. CTF was always compelling to me as a child, since it tested my ability to outrun or outmaneuver people who were bigger and possibly faster than myself, depending on where we were playing and how wide we set the boundaries. This was a convincing hook to get me into TF2, as it presented a video game version of a game I already loved playing and understood quite intimately. But Lucid's narrative is set. He is going to be quite critical of the game mode in TF2 itself. This is surprising since the mechanics of CTF itself are quite simple. I know that Lucid said, by all accounts, meaning that he's discussing the popular consensus of opinions, but videos like this tend to be structured as bringing up various opinions and viewing the subject of discussion in an objective manner afterwards. So on first viewing, I was quite confused as to what he would bring up as the whole host of issues.
It is really subject to steamroll.
If you want to be able to see your wife or your kids,
it is very bad.
You're not going to finish the match. You gotta close the game.
Actually doing the objective is...
No, it's actually a game mode.
Trying to pull your teeth out, basically.
Games can end in 2 minutes, or games can last 2 hours because of an awful stalemate.
So why has it become so iconic and effective at enveloping players in the world of TF2? Well, today, I'm going to go answer that exact question. We're going to go through the history of the game mode, interview prominent TF2 players, and analyze its game design, all to figure out exactly what's made CTF capture the hearts of so many players over the years. Sit back, grab a snack, and join me for the ultimate deep dive into one of the most iconic game modes in gaming history. This is the untold story of TF2's Capture the Flag.
So the conclusion to his intro are testimonials from fellow YouTubers and friends of his, the bog standard video essayist pitch, and a short animated intro. There's a lot to unpack here. On first viewing, I was under the impression that there would be objective criticisms of the game mode right out the gate, but all the testimonials outside of Zesty's are subjectively based and are worthless for the point of the video. Zesty says that games are subject to steamroll and that the time on certain matches can vary on quite a significant range. As to the first point, I would simply reply that any game is subject to steamroll should one side be insufficient at their job for literally any reason one can think of. A team with even a little more communication than the other can find victory far easier to achieve. I've played many games of attack-defend, 5 control point, and payload, where the attacking and defending teams were unbreakable in their tactics, and a lot of that can come down to the losing team not coordinating and throwing themselves at a brick wall of a team, or simply not being as good yet. This is perfectly fine. Some players and teams are simply better than others, and there's no fault in that. On the second point, however, I had to readjust my perspective towards this conversation on first viewing. Variable times like that can only occur on a system where the map has no timer, and the primary example for that is TF2's casual matchmaking. For some reason, when carrying over the CTF game mode from the quick play system to the matchmaking system, the developers didn't think of leaving the 45-minute round timers on the maps. The timers were simply removed with a singular round limit, so games hosted on the dedicated Valve servers can, in theory, run forever. I was under the impression that this was a critique of the game mode itself, but the manipulation of the game mode by casual is now being brought into the conversation, as if it's part and parcel with the game mode. But in TF2's default settings, or playing on a community server with a standard rule set, CTF maps have 30 to 45-minute round timers that will signal the rotation to the next map upon completion. This was the standard way to play Capture the Flag and pretty much every map the game had to offer since launch and through the quick play era, until casual was introduced, but this could still be accomplished with community servers that ran the default rule set. I suppose this means that the casual matchmaking should be included as part of the information in the first point about steamrolling then. And I understand why that's the case. Casual matchmaking is designed where if a team winds up being unbalanced due to several people leaving at once, autobalance won't kick in until those old player slots are officially unreserved. This never happens immediately due to waiting for a reconnection or a connection from a new player, taking as long as 2 minutes before timing out. Sometimes. Sometimes the game will automatically auto-balance. Sometimes the game will warn a player it already chose 5 to 10 seconds before actually doing it, and those could be crucial seconds if the auto-balance was supposed to have triggered at the high point of a team fight. Sometimes the game can take up to 5 minutes to unreserve the slots, and this can absolutely lead to steamrolls from the team with more players, but that's not the fault of CTF, or any of the other game modes for that matter. That's just the fault of the casual matchmaking system inflicted upon the game modes being played. I'm going to assume that the matchmaking system isn't what Zesty meant in the first point, but that he did mean it in the second point, because it would be very illogical if he labeled a casual system flaw as a game mode flaw, even though he did that in the second point anyway. Lucid asks why CTF as a game mode has become iconic and effective at enveloping players into the world of TF2. I would say that the effectiveness is down to the player, since that seems to lean on the subjective side of things, but I won't deny that CTF provides an excellent training ground for learning the mechanics of TF2 in a manner easily understandable. He says he'll answer this question in the course of this video while discussing the history of the game mode, interviewing YouTubers, which he's already tested at, and analyze the game design.
When Jeremy enters his first game of CTF, the first thing he sees is the spawn room. As discussed in the payload video, the spawn room is typically a place of refuge and setup, as all the players on each team get together and hang out with their teammates. However, in CTF, things work a bit differently. One of the most well-known facts about Capture the Flag in TF2 is that once games get going, they never, ever end.
For 9 years, Capture the Flag and Payload Race have had their round timer entirely gutted, meaning there's no guaranteed end to any game until one team wins.
They can easily go on for over an hour at a time, without much effort on the TF2 players themselves. As such, players who join a game of Capture the Flag, whether it be through casual mode or a community server, are typically not going to join at the beginning of the match, so they likely won't be able to meet people and chill in the spawn room. Instead, players like Jeremy over here will likely be joining in the middle of the match, thrown into the action instantly with no chance to get acquainted with the environment or their teammates.
The spawn room description is reasonable. I'm never one to hang out with teammates per se, as rarely anyone has a mic open, but I do my best to get some conversation going that will lead into communication about the game itself. He says, however, in CTF, things work a bit differently. When I first heard that, I thought he was going to talk about how the spawn room system is different, to which I would have been fine with if he brought up something like the pregame timer, and I assumed Lucid was going to bring up this key difference, but he just sidelines his point altogether. He starts talking about the spawn room, suddenly switches to talking about how games supposedly never end, and tries to wrap that back around to saying that most people won't ever join at the beginning of a match regardless of casual or community servers, with no chance to get acquainted with their environment or their teammates. He also brings in RichterOvertime, who talks about a flaw with casual matchmaking, enabling him to use that as a flaw with the game mode itself? So let me try to map this out in more concise terms. Lucid talks about the spawn room and its purpose, alludes to it working differently than usual, shunts that point to talk about the unfortunate nature of joining late into a game, and concludes by claiming that because you will more than likely join the game late, this damages the impression new players have on the game mode. In these 3 paragraphs between Lucid and Richter, 3 completely different points have been made, and Lucid tries to convince the audience that they're related because of grammar. I'm not kidding, this literally comes down to grammar. He introduces premise A, almost clarifies for a different context, suddenly switches to premise B with Richter, and concludes with, because premise A, premise C, without any foundation for premise C in the first place. I don't know why Richter needed to be dramatic by describing the round timer as entirely gutted. It was simply removed in casual, which actually brings up a problem. The video has made it clear that CTF is only being talked about in terms of casual matchmaking, which would be fine, except that Lucid shunts the point again by saying that this presumed flaw of games lasting forever happens regardless of casual or community servers. So which one is it? Community servers are their own issue, as many will run the standard rule set while others will configure the map to run 24/7 with no capture limit and even instant respawn. And again, Richter and Lucid are bringing up a flaw with the casual matchmaking system, not the functions of the game itself. This will deceive people who aren't paying attention to believe that casual flaws are equivalent and can be conflated with the game modes themselves, which is downright false. When talking about the game mode itself, it would be most honest to discuss it at base. In default settings, the game ends when one team captures the flag 3 times. The game will then reset until the server announces a vote for the next map, and will send the players to the next map at the appropriate time. If the current game does not end before the map timer concludes, the game ends in an officially declared stalemate. Also, what on earth does Richter mean? No guaranteed end to any game until one team wins. That's the outcome the vast majority of the time anyways. A game with an objective as a requirement for victory will end when that victory is achieved. That's how this game works. I suppose I would need more specifics to get to the bottom of what he's saying, without just interfering or assuming, but so far this is weak argumentation with vague descriptions of an experience without quantifying anything. It ties in with the idea that CTF games never ever end once they start, but even that is disingenuous language since A, it's factually not true, but B, it's a massive overgeneralization to levy as a premise. As for players like Jeremy joining the middle of a match, the only reasonable response to this is, so what? People join in the middle of matches all the time, regardless of casual or community servers. There's no telling when a game starts or ends, and especially in community servers, you'd be exceedingly fortunate to join the exact start of a game right as you enter the server. At least casual mode tries to put you in a starting game, but more often than not, yes, it will put you in an ongoing game, but that's just the circumstance of people already playing. I don't see how that's anything to complain about.
As Jeremy walks out of the spawn doors, a thought suddenly dawns on him. What am I supposed to be doing? Help! The impatient teenager just so happened to spam through the wall of text that hits you when you first open the match, so he missed this blurb about how the game mode actually works and what the objective is. Luckily for him, TF2 is made so that players can get the goal of the game through visual design and context clues. Jeremy doesn't have to know what any of this UI stuff means, because the second he walks out of spawn, he gets auto-balanced to the other team.
Alright, well, none of this has anything to do with the game mode at all. He's just assuming incompetence to suit his little story. I hope this doesn't become a major point in his criticisms of CTF, since nothing he's brought up in this section has anything to do with CTF. This is a player problem, not a CTF problem, or even a TF2 problem in general. If a player is impatient and chooses not to know what any of the UI stuff means, that's a him problem, as condescending as that sounds. And you know what? While I'm at it, allow me to address the UI problem. Jeremy simply resigns to not understanding his own UI when there's some important information there, such as the flag location, the number of flags captured for each side, and what flag is currently down, actively being taken, or being preserved at home base. What's more important, however, is that Lucid's footage is showing a customized UI. That's fine if you're okay with the idea that this is just Lucid playing to demonstrate, but there are multiple instances where Lucid attempts to mimic Jeremy by switching between the stock loadout and his custom loadout. But the UI doesn't change. The UI really is the first point where immersion is broken for anyone paying attention for longer than 2 seconds. If Jeremy is a fresh install, regardless of how long he's been following the game, he will have started with the base UI just to get into the game. In that UI, it very clearly outlines where the flags are located for each team, gives him a character icon for his class, and even ammo counts for the class weapons. If he's a fresh install, again, regardless of however long he's been watching other people play the game, this information is important to Jeremy, and he certainly wouldn't be using mods to display that for himself. And even if, somehow, that information didn't matter to Jeremy, he still has been following the game for a very long time, long enough to not require a dismissal of the information. The fact that Lucid outlines this right after a remark about Jeremy being an impatient teenager implies that Jeremy is simply inept at worst, or brazenly overconfident in his ability to grasp a new game at best. But if he's been following the game for this long, then this shouldn't be happening in Jeremy's mind anyway. He shouldn't be confused as to where he needs to go or what to do. He shouldn't be confused by his own HUD, and he definitely shouldn't be using mods as a starting point. Seriously, who downloads TF2 and plays for the first time with a fully customized TF2 experience? And considering how clueless and new Jeremy acts over the course of this video, it's a level of dissonance in the overall narrative that gives me a headache just thinking about. And I know that there will be people running to Lucid's rescue by saying he was just recording footage from his own setup, and that's fine, but for this kind of video, where a fictional narrative is being constructed to set up and pay off what are presumably objective criticisms of CTF as a game mode, this lack of care in forging the experience to look as realistic as possible is inexcusable. It would not have taken him very long to back up his custom folder and remember to just gather all of his footage with no cosmetics and with stock weapons. Heck, he could have even spoofed his name on Steam to say Jeremy, and he doesn't even do that. This ruins the immersion that Lucid is very clearly trying to set up and impress people with, especially when making such a clear note of the UI from his own setup as if it's Jeremy playing. To return to the primary subject, yes, TF2 is made so that players can understand the game very quickly through simply playing it, but if we're still operating on the principle of playing in casual mode, then I guess he missed the big screen that displays the map, images of the map, the game mode, and hours played on certain classes. Either Lucid just forgot to add this in his hypothetical, or he rushed the script, or he's ignoring it on purpose. For this particular element, I'm not going to assume that he's trying to paint his character as thoroughly inept, but Jeremy so far comes across as utterly incompetent, which doesn't lend a whole lot of credence to future points that possibly rely upon the narrative as a support. I mean, Jeremy's been following the game for years, allegedly, so he shouldn't be confused about what he's supposed to do. Does he not know this map somehow? With the jab at autobalance on the end, we have an entire paragraph that wastes the viewer's time for a solid 32 seconds. This provides no insight on Capture the Flag or its supposed flaws. It just takes time to tell the audience that Jeremy is an idiot or an amnesiac. Not looking good so far.
Well, regardless, Jeremy is now well aware that there's a blue team and a red team, and he's played Capture the Flag in his PE class at school, so he understands that the goal is to get to the other end of the map, find the flag, and bring it back to his base. He doesn't really know where it is, per se, but he'll figure that out on the way. He's playing Scout after all, the fastest character in the game, so this should be a piece of cake.
This is a good paragraph. Jeremy is now beginning to intuit the basic points of the game after missing several direct opportunities about what he's playing and how to play. Better late than never, I suppose. Jeremy even has prior experience with this game from in-person sports, so the concept makes sense to him. I don't know if the character knows that Scout is the fastest character, since this is a brand new game, but Lucid did say earlier that Jeremy had been following the game before actually playing it, so I'll infer that he already knows what Scout is capable of in some vague sense.
So Jeremy runs out of spawn, and this may be more difficult than he thought. Unfortunately for Jeremy, he's currently running into one of Capture the Flag's main design flaws, which is the imbalance between defense and offense. What do you think is Capture the Flag's greatest weakness?
Probably the fact that scouts, or really just anyone, but scouts in general, can just immediately end the rounds if they cap 3 times and no one's really paying attention.
It's in a way actually similarly flawed to 5 Control Point, where 5 Control Point is subject to the same issues, where games can end in 2 minutes thanks to a significant enough skill discrepancy, or games can last 2 hours because of an awful stalemate.
The one person who wants to play the objective, they will go to the enemy's flag because no one will be watching it. And there's like 4 engineers there with the sentry base.
For people attempting to defend their flag, their job is usually brain dead easy. Select engineer, go to the spawn room, place a sentry, level it up, and boom, you've basically won Capture the Flag. Unlike other game modes where sentry spots are able to be easily flanked and infiltrated by spies and explosive classes, most CTF maps have their intel in an enclosed space far from the actual fight, making it incredibly difficult for the enemy team to mount a successful push against a sentry nest and get the enemy flag as long as there's at least one competent engineer on the other team.
There's so much to unpack here, so I might as well start from the beginning. Firstly, Jeremy runs into battle headlong and dies. Predictable for a beginner without external guidance, even if he has experience with observing the game. But that's not the flaw, according to Lucid. It's the imbalance between offense and defense. His testimonials are staggered in a very strange way. Lister first explains that scouts make the game very easy to win on the condition that no one is paying attention. So if people are paying attention, it isn't easy, and there are methods to ensure that people will pay attention, as Lucid will get to later, but I'll get to it first. There are announcements that trigger when the flag is picked up, dropped, returned, and captured. This gets people's attention to where they'd have to choose to ignore it. Also, Lister just generalizes Scout's entire function to cap and win. This is horribly disingenuous. As a former Scout main, just running to the intel room and capping an entire 3 times in a server with at least 10 other people is not that easy. Regardless of 24/7 standard rule set or casual mode, winning the game is not as simple as capturing 3 times. It can be, yes, but on the condition that everyone is simply not paying attention for the entire time. You'd have to be quite lucky to run into that sort of situation, even in 24/7 servers. Zesty's criticism is just dumb. It's not grandiose in its logical failings, nor does it even attempt to sound smart. It's just dumb. Games can end very quickly thanks to a skill discrepancy, or can last forever because of a stalemate. He's not talking about stalemates in the officially declared way, as I mentioned earlier, so what I'm left to assume is that in his mind, stalemate in this context means equal skill across both teams. So in short, games can go short because one side is better, or games can go long because both sides are equally good. What? First of all, some teams just wind up being better than others. That's the nature of sorting randoms into a game together. Some players will be so good that victory and defeat can be achieved by merit of what team they happen to play on. That's not a fault of the game mode, that just sounds like saltiness against people being better than you. Even in teams matched as equally as possible, there will be one side that edges out a win based on even a technically minor circumstantial play, like the sniper being down, or a sentry being taken out, or a spy being caught. Also, if the teams were evenly stacked in skill against each other, suddenly the most likely outcome, at least the one Zesty chooses to vocalize, is where both teams don't make any progress? That doesn't make any sense. I thought you were just against steamrolls in the previous example. Wouldn't you then want teams to be even? Pick a lane or just stop complaining altogether, because that's all this really is. Zesty is just complaining that games end a certain way, but that they also end a different certain way. Why? I have no idea. People will probably think I'm being needlessly dismissive, but this is literally all he says. This part is not elaborated on in the entire video whatsoever. And the dumbest part is that what he says can apply to all game modes. Steamrolls can occur in attack defend, payload, or 5 control point, or the fight is long and hard fought. I assume by his logic that it would be equally unsatisfying if there was a universal timer for CTF and 5 control point that just timed the game out at 10 minutes regardless of the state of the game, interrupting whatever progress was potentially being made and forcing everyone into an officially declared stalemate anyways. In short, he wants a timer, but he also doesn't want a timer. But he also wants rounds to end, just not too quickly or too slowly, and his quantification for the timing is simply a range between 2 minutes and 2 hours, supremely unhelpful and almost completely subjectively based. And Lucid won't even clarify this, because his point will immediately shift into blanketly stating that defense is so much easier to play, particularly as engineer, but I'll get into that in a moment. Junko Kitty's explanation is that Scout can get over to the flag room really easily because no one will be watching, only for 4 engineers to be sitting in the flag room to gun him down. So people were watching the flag, and he's mad about that. Lister's example was that Scout was too easy to play, Zesty's example was that games just end inconsistently, and Kitty's point is that defense is too hard to penetrate by oneself as a Scout. At this point, the only way to combat these points would be to talk to these YouTubers directly and ask for clarification on certain points, since most of it is subjective and what remains is either completely unrelated or tangentially related and requires more of a substantive statement. Besides, Lucid will just clarify his point for the audience, and it undercuts the previous interview segments. I don't know why he wasted time placing them in his video, since his final point literally contradicts Lister's, but I suppose he wanted to bolster the runtime? He claims that it's not Scout who's the win button class, but Engineer. As long as one engineer sits in the intel room and behaves competently, he can apparently defend the flag room from an entire team all by himself.
Making it incredibly difficult for the enemy team to mount a successful push against a sentry nest and get the enemy flag as long as there's at least one competent engineer on the other team.
This is a lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is just a lie. As much as a medic and a pyro can invade intel and destroy engineer's sentry with ubercharge, or even patience, if pyro can bait the engineer out for just long enough, all that's left to deal with once the engineer's down is the sentry gun. This is pretty easy to peek around all the corners of the intel room to destroy, even with a shotgun. If, however, I give Lucid the maximum benefit of the doubt and say that when he said team, he somehow meant just one player, even this is a lie, because any class that can reasonably make it to the intel room can destroy the sentry if they exercise basic care. There is a level 2 sentry in there, soldier. Just keep an eye out. It's in the back corner. Yeah, corner to your left. Kill the engineer, kill the engineer. Yep. Well done, well done. See, that wasn't so hard. All you need to do is expose one crack and the whole defense is dismantled. If the engineer is assumed to be competent, we must also assume that the enemy players can be assumed as competent as well. A single stock-equipped soldier can take a sentry gun down and its engineer without too much of a hassle, easily securing the flag. Same with Heavy, Pyro, and Demoman. Scout and Spy can do it, but they require more care in their approach. The point is, it's not even incredibly difficult to mount an attack against a single engineer and his sentry gun. That's a massive overgeneralization, again.
And that's not to mention the other problem, which is that it's immensely difficult to get to the flag in the first place, assuming the enemy team is actually playing the objective. It's so far away on most maps that only 2 of the 9 classes can realistically make a run for it, like you would in an IRL match of Capture the Flag, while every other class in the game would likely need assistance from their team to escort them all the way there and all the way back. In short, defense in CTF is incredibly easy, while offense is massively difficult by comparison. This is easily Capture the Flag's worst design flaw, and one Jeremy, along with many other players, have struggled with.
Lucid says that defense is incredibly easy and offense is incredibly hard. He assumes that the enemy team is playing the objective, but he doesn't specify for Jeremy's team. This is probably an oversight, but if one team was actually playing and the other team didn't care, the round would be quite easy to win for the team that was actually playing. I would assume that goes without saying, but again, that's probably just an oversight in the script. Again, though, Lucid generalizes the flag placement as so far away when he has yet to quantify why the average distances for flag placement is bad. Should the flags be closer together? Should the map design accommodate that change? If so, why? How much closer should they be? How does one objectively quantify how far is too far? I believe in the principle of the range of acceptable outcomes, so I know there is a limit. And while the line blurs due to subjective ideas between players, there definitely is a limit of too far and too close. Unfortunately, he will not quantify this statement now, nor in the rest of the video. He's not going to suggest a fix to his so-called problem, he's just going to let his complaint sit there, on its own. Assuming both teams are playing the game the way it's meant to be played, yes, 2 classes are more optimally designed to capture flags than any of the rest. Just like how 2 classes are designed to defend the flag more optimally than any other. As to the point of each other class needing assistance to walk back, it's not necessary, but it's completely dependent on the context of the game state and people playing, something he's not even going to try to quantify, address, or even hint at. Again, he's just going to say that people need to rely on their teammates. Team Fortress 2 is a team game, so I don't know why that's a problem. I suppose relying on randoms is beneath a man like Lucid, or perhaps he sees it as too difficult. I'm not sure, but it doesn't do anything other than setting an arbitrary roadblock in front of himself to try proving a point. Keep in mind, this is the only time he's talked about teamwork as a viable strategy against what he describes as competent defense, and it's only to belittle the idea that teammates help each other. This will be relevant later, trust me. So he thinks he's made a point, but all he's said is that offense is hard and that defense is bad because it's inconvenient to actually pursue the flag. This is a false dilemma. Not only does this inconvenience not exist, but it's entirely subjective. Some people genuinely enjoy tearing down a formidable defense, and that won't be taken away from them. All I heard from this paragraph was, it's too hard to go all the way there and all the way back, so I'm forced to play 2 classes that struggle against defense. But I don't want to rely on teammates because... Actually, he doesn't even say why this is a bad thing. I'm just assuming he thinks it's a bad thing to rely on teammates and play like a team sport. I don't have any reason to believe otherwise, so I'm just left to infer that he doesn't like the idea of playing a team game with his team. And he doesn't clarify this position at all. He just complains about it and lets it sit. Again.
The reality is, flag captures in Capture the Flag are rare. They aren't going to happen consistently throughout the game, and for some matches they may never happen at all.
You have complete autonomy to do whatever you want in the game. and that usually leads to a lot more funny community-esque interactions because no one's actually playing the game.
This has become something the game mode is known for. Long, drawn-out stalemates with neither team making any real progress.
It seems like Valve outright forgot CTF even existed while designing some of the game's post-launch unlocks. The god-awful Wrangler shield that gives sentries 600 health. The short circuit that deletes projectiles. Air blast countering soldiers. And the home wrecker have all made it even easier to turn intel rooms into impenetrable strongholds. All of these changes since the game's early years have turned infiltrating the intel on a sweaty server from a fun challenge to a cacophony of unintelligible that pubs sometimes just don't have the coordination to deal with.
Lucid's first two sentences are vague. Rare. What do you mean by rare? Do you mean once every 3 minutes? Once every 5 minutes? 10 minutes? 20? You've made claims without qualifying or quantifying them, and it doesn't sound like you know what you're talking about. Wheezy's statement is that people just don't play the game because of autonomy. Yes, people don't play CTF, and it's quite a shame since they'll play any other game mode with at least some serious intent. But once it comes to grabbing an object, as opposed to standing in one place and affecting an object at least a little bit, suddenly that incentive just disappears from people's minds. I don't know why it works this way, but perhaps Lucid will grant the audience the courtesy of explaining. Lucid then says that CTF is now known for drawn-out games with no real purpose occurring between either team. Again, you say real without defining what that means in the context of the game. Please clarify your position. Before going further, I'd like to explain something very important. The original first draft of this script was completed about a day before a critical piece of information was brought to light. For those who don't know, Lucid has a second channel called Lucid Live. In this channel, my wife and I had already reacted to a video of his while we were still engaged, but after the main CTF video was uploaded, he started uploading the mostly raw audio files from his interviews with the featured YouTubers. At the time of writing, he's only uploaded 2 of those segments, Zesty Jesus and RichterOvertime. While Zesty Jesus' segment is informative in regards to his beliefs, there is nothing noteworthy outside of further explanation upon the points that were already made throughout the main video. Richter's segment, however, gives me pause for concern. For reference, Richter's interview is used 5 times in Lucid's main video. It has already been used once before the segment just covered. The complete Richter interview is just over 8 minutes in length, and there are things he says that bring me to believe that Lucid has either severely misunderstood him, or worse yet, has cut him out of context. In regards to Lucid's first use of Richter's interview segment, Lucid conjoined this segment of the interview with his points on how games never seem to end, the spawn room, and the unrelated issue with getting to know your teammates better. But this is not the context of the original interview.
Maybe the simplest way I could describe CTF's biggest weakness is that it simply wasn't built with all the crazy and terrible things Valve did to TF2 after its release in mind. And it's admittedly in a very rough state today. Before Meet Your Match, Capture the Flag servers had time limits, and matches would usually end within 30 minutes to an hour. There were stalemates, but also sudden death mechanics that kept things fun. Nowadays, though, nobody even remembers any of that. Because for 9 years, Capture the Flag and Payload Race have been basically broken, functioning completely different to how their formats were originally designed. For 9 years, Capture the Flag and Payload Race have had their round timer entirely gutted, meaning there's no guaranteed end to any game until one team wins. A game of CTF can now last multiple hours when it used to typically last 30 to 50 minutes, and with no stalemates or team scrambles anymore, it's essentially turned the game mode into TF2 purgatory. Switching out time limits for round limits and removing scramble and Meet Your Match is one of the biggest mistakes Valve ever made with TF2, but practically no other game mode was hurt by it more than CTF.
The segment used in order to support the point that CTF rounds seem to never end was not spoken in the context the point used it for. Instead, Richter's words lamented that Valve changed the system that all game modes were played on, and that CTF suffered the most critically alongside Payload Race. But Richter makes it unmistakably clear that Valve made this mistake when implementing casual mode, and blames them justly for it. He does not count it as a fault of the game mode mechanics itself. He counts it as a fault of casual mode being implemented so poorly. This most certainly has nothing to do with the spawn room or with getting to know one's teammates better, nor is it even a criticism of Capture the Flag itself. If anything, this is a criticism of Valve's poor decision-making when it came to porting CTF into casual mode. poor decision-making that justly deserves the judgment. This could be understood as a simple error on Lucid's end, but the second segment that was played moments ago is far more egregious. Lucid very quickly says that CTF is now known for long drawn-out stalemates, with no team making progress. Then it hastily shifts to Richter's rant about weapon balancing, then back to Lucid telling his character how he feels. But when looked at in the right context, Richter's words yet again don't fit here. The first clip is one paragraph behind the addendum just heard, and the other is to flesh out the weapon design argument more coherently.
What's its biggest weakness? When you ask me what CTF's biggest weakness is, it's a bit of a tricky question. Because really, a lot of the weaknesses that come to mind regarding CTF are just products of how TF2 as a game and its players' tastes have changed with time. Sure, CTF maps are usually cramped, choky, and not very vertical, but that's how almost all the older official maps were. For the most part, that's just how the game was originally designed before certain unlockable items and game rebalances encouraged Valve to open things up more. And then there's the issue of how CTF is primarily played today through casual mode. Maybe some of the crazy things Valve has done to the game in other departments don't help either. Of course, the contract system interacts with CTF poorly since the games go on forever, while contracts require you to finish your match to turn them in. But far more egregiously, it seems like Valve outright forgot CTF even existed while designing some of the game's post-launch unlocks. Mini-sentries let NGs sneakily harass enemy teams in a way that's not very fun or skillful. The god-awful Wrangler shield that gives sentries 600 health. The short circuit that deletes projectiles. Air blast countering soldiers. And the home wrecker have all made it even easier to turn intel rooms into impenetrable strongholds. That's not even mentioning how the rescue ranger makes it possible to keep a nest alive from around a corner and steal it away when it's about to die its rightful death. All of these changes since the game's early years have turned infiltrating the intel on a sweaty server from a fun challenge. To a cacophony of unintelligible that pubs sometimes just don't have the coordination to deal with. In my opinion, CTF is not the antiquated, directionless demonstrating the worst 2007 delirium of TF2's devs. That's Hydro.
For the record, I do disagree with Richter on several minor points, but that's not the reason I bring this part up. The reason I bring it up is because Lucid attempts to establish that CTF is drawn out, stalemate prone, and that flag captures are rare due to player autonomy. Then attempts to throw in Richter's point about weapon balancing as if it's relevant. Even if it was relevant, Richter's arguments about weapon design, according to the unfiltered thoughts, were clearly in regard to the mistreatment of the game mode by Valve, again. If the conversation were being had honestly here, the topic of Valve's mistreatment of CTF and the game as a whole would be its own video altogether. But Lucid has taken a statement that is quite clearly a problem with Valve and made it a problem with the game mode. It is unfortunate that the game mode is currently in the place that it's in, yes, but no attempt is made to place the blame where it's due. Not once here, or throughout the entire video as a matter of fact, does Lucid make an attempt at criticizing Valve for the mistreatment of the game and the seeming abandonment of CTF. But Richter's point was that CTF is only in the state that it's in as a result of Valve's mismanagement with the game in general. Lucid instead blames the game mode for just being the game mode, when that is not only unfair to the game mode, but it's simply untrue. The flaws pointed out are problems as a result of casual mode and are not innate to the core mechanics of CTF itself. In short, Lucid has taken RichterOvertime out of context twice in this video, and the first instance can be overlooked, hence why I only elected to bring it up now, but this instance is critical knowledge for the pacing of Lucid's video. He does not represent the context or arguments that Richter actually made faithfully or reasonably. He instead cherry-picks in an attempt to support a point of his own, when in fact, that point was not the same point Richter was trying to make. It's incredibly dishonest, and frankly insulting to RichterOvertime himself. If Richter had a chance to view the final cut, I'm amazed he has yet to speak up about it. But there's one final point to address. One that is stapled so strongly to the narrative that I should have seen it coming a mile away, knowing Lucid, but it rings incoherent all the same.
This is Capture the Flag.
No, it's not. You've addressed problems that either don't exist or are not related to the game mode in any fashion.
And for now, Jeremy is not enjoying it.
That's too bad. It's his personal feelings. Don't tell me you're going to levy his feelings as the objective basis for your arguments, Lucid. That would be stupid.
After all, he wants to win. Isn't that what playing games is for?
Now I know what this video will turn into, because I've witnessed this argument almost everywhere I go in the TF2 world, and every single time is wrong. There is this cognitive dissonance where people villainize, look down upon, or dismiss the idea of playing to win as being fun. The idea is that playing to win is actually antithetical to the idea of having fun. When called on this, most people will backpedal and say, of course, people who have fun playing to win are having fun. Fun is subjective, after all. But then they'll frame their arguments like this, as if people who play to win aren't actually interacting with the true spirit of the game, and that they're not truly having fun, that there's something missing somewhere, somehow. As far as the story is concerned, Jeremy is shown to be an utter dunce. He dies because he's new and doesn't understand how to mesh with his team to complete the objective, and that's all in spite of having followed the game for a long time. Despite playing a team game, he only sees the game through the lens of high-frequency self-gratification and individualistic pleasure. He's a dopamine addict, and his first experience with this game requires a modicum of work to achieve anything worth having. And what does he do? He chooses not to find value in the objective laid before him. He chooses to exhibit disdain towards the goal the game has laid before him. Nobody said it would be easy, yet now he wants it to be, because he won't have fun otherwise. This is utterly pathetic. Lucid's character is an utter moron. As backhanded and subtle as it is, this video is going to downplay to the point of mocking the pursuit of victory, because that's not what makes TF2 TF2. Utter hedonistic depravity. But don't take my word for it, take Lucid's.
As some red team mercenaries attempt to break into 2Fort's main lobby, Jeremy rounds the corner and sees a heavy valiantly defending his team's territory. Jeremy, without thinking, throws winning to the side for a moment and saves the heavy. They taunt next to each other to celebrate their kill, and instantly, a friendship has been formed. This interaction leaves something of a smile on Jeremy's face. It was so satisfying to just save one of his teammates from certain doom, and the Heavy was happy to receive the help. Unfortunately, the Heavy would immediately head out of the fort and instantly be gunned down. But such are things in the wild world of 2Fort.
See? Lucid's story does not establish why it was more satisfying for Jeremy to help a teammate out when he needed it, even if it wasn't as direct of a goal as capturing the flag. It just was because he said so, and his script is most certainly going to rely upon it for the future. Also, the scenario he records to prop up his narrative is so unrealistic considering the circumstances, it made me laugh the first time I saw it. And of course, at the end, the Heavy is a retard and walks straight into his death because he, like so many others who play this game, think they're a one-man show. What a great representation of TF2's player base. You can guarantee that Lucid's script will rely on this, which is just sad, because now the whole video is going to be easy to throw out on the basis that it hinges on the subjective nature of what Jeremy finds enjoyable versus what other people find enjoyable. But Lucid's not going to talk about other people. He's going to talk about just how correct Jeremy's perspective is, because reasons. He's going to stick to his character, and by God, the script will bend and break to suit the agenda of his little story if he has to force it there, and believe me, he will force it.
As Jeremy continues into the sewers, he runs into the second major problem with Capture the Flag, the oftentimes horrendous map design. What do you think is the greatest weakness of Capture the Flag?
It might actually just come down to map design.
What's that one map with is it Silo?
And how a lot of the maps have really, really unfortunate sniper sightlines.
Turbine. Fucking Turbine, dude.
And a lot of the intel rooms have awful sentry placements that no one likes taking out.
You load in a Turbine server, there's like 7 engineers in your team. They're all sitting in the fucking room.
It's somewhat map dependent. I think a lot of the older Capture the Flag maps are a bit more entertaining than newer ones tend to be. Newer ones tend to be really big and really open and spread players too thin.
And then the other team has the same thing, and then it's just sniper team deathmatch.
One they added just for the summer update, Pressure. It's just so massive, and it's this big spaghetti bowl. It spreads players too thin. It's just...
Do you have any more thoughts about Turbine that you'd like to share?
This section is a few YouTubers talking about how much they hate certain elements of CTF map design. There is a more direct counter-argument that I will make later, but the only thing that I really need to say at this point is so what? The idea that this is a CTF map design problem is actually a red herring, a distraction from the actual problem. The problem with the points about map design being made is that not only are they not elaborated on nearly enough, but that just because there is potentially poor map design in CTF does not mean that it is inherently a CTF problem. Every game mode has this problem, and I know defenders of Lucid can counter by saying that he doesn't need to mention that every other game mode has examples of bad map design, but he makes it an explicit point that this is a CTF problem. The second major problem with Capture the Flag, the oftentimes horrendous map design, that is explicitly a condemnation of CTF specifically, when such a condemnation is entirely unwarranted and underdeveloped in terms of evidence.
These sewers are long, winding corridors beneath the map, perfect for snipers or projectile spam. They're also the only flank route in all of 2 Fort. This is unfortunately a weirdly consistent part of Capture the Flag maps in TF2. They often have a severe lack of flank routes and alternate paths. 2 Fort, Turbine, Double Cross, and even CTF Well all suffer from having a wide open area in the middle that most players are funneled through, with maybe one alternative way to get to the flag from there. This problem also causes players to frequently have long, drawn-out stalemates in the middle of the map, while the one alternate flank route is constantly defended by a sniper or an engineer.
I don't know what the point of this paragraph is. As far as I can tell, this is bellyaching about a map design choice with no proposed alternative. My question to this would simply be, lack of flank routes and alternative paths compared to what? What would be a solution? Are there any examples from other game modes that can be pulled? He doesn't even try to, he just leaves his complaints to hang without a suggested solution. Again. I know other YouTubers have attempted to address what they think a solution to the problem is, and man, those are some hideous maps. Part of the point, too, is that teams are naturally constrained in their areas just enough to where the idea naturally occurs to them that they should act like a team. That's literally the design philosophy of TF2, to design a game that's satisfying to play individually while also forming teamwork as a happy accident. Every facet of the class balance and map design at base was carefully constructed to account for that, and I don't see how they didn't do well. At this point, players simply choose not to play as teams, which is, of course, a completely separate issue and conversation.
Here, how about this? 2 Fort doesn't have this isn't a flank. Same with Double Cross under the bridge. These aren't flanks. You're not flanking anything.
They're what I would call alt main.
Yeah, they're just alternate paths that you can take because they're not like going around anything.
Yeah.
They're spitting you out in the base still.
Flanks involve going out of your way to move farther up in a position where the main route can't take you directly.
Over the bridge or under the bridge. I guess any other option is a flank. But then he'd just be wrong because Turbine.
Well, then okay, if that's a flank, then what determines the main route?
I think at this point, it's literally vibes for him. Like he's defining a flank as the less traveled path.
Yeah, like, I mean, here's my thing, right? If you're gonna go off of vibes, let's just say, okay, well, if we give benefit of that, you're gonna do vibes. Can you give other examples so we actually know what the you're referring to?
No, because if it's vibes, then it's gonna be inconsistent at some point because he can't stick to it. That goes in line with vibes.
You still get a general feel for what he means, but he doesn't give anything.
Okay. Actually, he has some image examples for this.
Severe lack of flank routes and alternate paths.
Severe lack, as if like you need at least 3 flank routes for a map to be good, right?
2 Fort.
Oh, man, Vidoc has 3.
Even CTF well.
Does it?
Look at this. Look at this.
Well, it has 3 ways to get to the point.
What flanks are there on well?
None.
What is he defining as a flank?
There's
what
no.
I want to know. Turbine.
Maybe, honestly, arguably, it's the vent. The vent is the only pathway I would call a flank.
Yeah, the vent's probably the one he's talking about.
The other 2 are main, because one draws to spawn and one is a wide area towards the flag directly, where most of the combat traditionally takes place.
Take the water on freight. You're going under the point, spit out on the enemy team side of the map on freight. You take that little... You go down the sewer and you go into the water.
Is that what he thinks that 2 Fort's sewer is? The equivalent
I assume that's what he thinks.
It has water, therefore it's a flank road.
The issue is that he doesn't define flank. If you're gonna like say, "Oh, it has no flanks," well, this isn't a word like this isn't a like commonly accepted word. You have to say what your definition is of something before you just put it out there. Does he show where the flanks are? Does he show where the flanks are?
No.
Let's keep going. Does he
No,
show
you
where
have
the
to
flanks are?
assume it. You have to assume it. We can only agree out of one of the 7 proposed flanks depending on how he counts.
that most players are funneled through, with maybe one alternative way.
There is no way he thinks that's a flank.
This guy's actually.
What in the
No.
world? No way.
No.
No way.
No.
Oh my god, it has water, therefore it's a flank.
No! There's no way. Wait, do you think he accidentally mixed up CP and CTF well and
No, I think he's just stupid.
He has to be. He has to be. He has to, because look at the right side. The right side literally has the wall that blocks it from being a flank. It's just an alternate route that's slower because of the water. How? Alex, you were right. It's just water equals flank. I can't.
Yeah?
Speaking of sniper, a lot of these CTF maps also suffer from the greatest affliction a TF2 map can have: long sightlines that cover most of the map. The effect of this is that there is always at least 2 snipers on both teams, constantly in a duel to see who can be the most annoying person in the entire lobby. This massive cluster of chaos was yet another obstacle preventing Jeremy from getting to the objective. The enemy team had set up camp in his own sewers, his side of the map, and there was nothing he could do about it. Eventually, after dying enough times, Jeremy was lost, defeated, and ready to stop playing TF2.
Lucid's subjective terms like annoying dismantle the argument for me, since it's not an argument anymore. It's an opinion that he's levying as a fact. He also tries to make snipers look brain-dead easy to play with his footage by just making Jeremy look brain-dead. Again, I wish he'd stop doing this. It destroys his credibility as a YouTuber for this game. As for Jeremy's feelings, they can't be controlled. I don't know why he feels the way he does, but such is life. Jeremy's team wasn't equipped to deal with a threat, and now they've set up camp in his sewers. That is a possibility the game allows for, and it's simply a result of bad map management and combat. And yeah, I assume a fresh install scout wouldn't be the most equipped to deal with a buff banner soldier, demo man, and medic. That makes sense, but Jeremy's spirits are crushed, and I'm assuming, based on how the narrative is structured, that I'm supposed to feel bad. But I don't feel bad for Jeremy at all. He's learning that not everything is just given to him in this game, as goofy of a game as it is, and as incompetent as a lot of its player base winds up becoming. The game is still hard enough to provide a challenge worth overcoming, though I suppose that could come down to the person. And again, Jeremy's been following the game for how long, and he hasn't seen anything that relates to a range of outcomes that involves this scenario? I was Jeremy once, playing Scout on 2 Fort to practice before playing other game modes, and I died a great many times. I never quit, and I never complained. I simply buckled down and learned how to get better. I asked players in the server how to play better, and I received help. I watched YouTube tutorials and learned how to cap more efficiently and how to avoid certain areas, but I also learned that not every problem can be solved with the same class, nor is it supposed to be. Some problems are meant to be solved with other classes, which is why this is a team game. There is a reliance on teammates to help with certain problems, and that's not a bad thing. That's the foundational point of the game. And Jeremy is butthurt because he's just dying too much for his liking? What, because he's new? That's pathetic. How in the world is that supposed to be relatable?
But on his way out of spawn, for what he thought would be the final time, he saw the Heavy from before. His ally was, per usual, in way too deep over his head. Jeremy ran up to the Heavy and taunted, in an attempt to show his friendship. In response, the Heavy promptly ran into a soldier-medic combo and immediately exploded into a flurry of red paste. Jeremy was not having it.
That was all you. Incoming!
Safe once again, he was happy to help his fellow Heavy. It felt really good to stand by his fat Russian friend and beat back the bad guys. Wasn't Jeremy frustrated just a second ago? Why was he suddenly having so much fun? It's not like they were any closer to the flag, to winning. And isn't that what playing games is for?
I see. So Jeremy's relatability as a character will come in the form of abandoning the gameplay for the LARPing and roleplay. Apparently fragging is fun, but not as a means to an end, that end being the flag. It's just for the sake of it. So now the fragging insists upon itself? This is beginning to sound a lot like winning isn't important, it's the friends we made along the way. I swear if that winds up being the conclusion of this entire video, that will be such a disappointment, because at that point, the only message conveyed to the audience is to just not play the game, though I doubt he'd actually use those words. He'll probably redefine what it means to play the game like so many people do. He better not, but it's not looking good. Also, the way Jeremy dealt with the soldier and medic was just ridiculously unrealistic. The heavy was being an idiot, and just jumping in with a bat isn't going to do anything. And stand by the heavy? In your footage, the heavy is still dead. He's literally doing this all by himself. There's no teamwork here at all. His teammate died, and all Jeremy did was avenge him, if you want to put it nicely. That doesn't bring him back or something. So, we come out,
he saw
that soldier, or whatever that class is, just died.
Dead.
Right?
And there's
there are two NGs and a spy. That spy is going to move into the back, distract the scout, and the heavy is going to kill the scout. So the spy somehow got back here really quickly. I don't know how, but that's not important, honestly.
Well, let's see what's cosmetics.
Over his head.
The scout is distracted. The heavy turns around because he hears him. The scout obviously dies because he's taunting.
In an attempt to show his friendship.
There's a sniper over there with the huntsman.
Yeah, but he's not in the shot here.
Where's the huntsman sniper go?
Also, Jeremy was in that frame, if you saw, and now he's gone. And he's just scooting around back here. If you saw, he pops up for a brief second.
The spy's going to backstab the soldier. Okay. Let's go, spy. Let's go.
Nah, he doesn't do anything. We don't even see the medic. The medic actually just disappears after this.
We don't even see the huntsman sniper. Where'd the huntsman sniper go? He would have been right there with the medic and soldier.
Where is Jeremy this whole time? Also, where did that rocket come from on the side?
Two rockets came in from the side. Where did they come from?
Greatest thing ever.
This is what I mean, okay? I could forgive any other mistake in the editing of this video. That is the most cobbled together, miserable, just lazy piece of work I've ever had the misfortune of seeing. And then we have to assume that the soldier has overheal, right? Or at least somewhat full health from the heavy shooting at him. And without any random crit, he's just dead. And we don't see what happened to the spy and the medic. We don't know if the spy got the medic. And we don't know what happened with the huntsman sniper. But the soldier is just dead because somehow he went from like 180 health down to 20. To return to a more important point, Lucid is portraying Jeremy as a person who thinks that playing games is for winning only, and in that pursuit he's forgetting to have fun. This is a straw man that I see a lot of people use, and I've even seen it used against me a couple of times, where people think that because you pursue victory, you must also then not be pursuing fun, as if people know that to pursue a win is just throwing fun away, like both can't exist at the same time. This is idiotic, as fun is completely subjective, but furthermore, the pursuit of victory is the design intent of the game. If the objective is to be completed, then it is to be fought for to at least some degree. If that wasn't the point, then the developers screwed up massively by having there be objectives at all. But hey, Jeremy's suddenly having fun, and suddenly he's not angry anymore, and we should feel happy for him because reasons yet to be explained. Be happy for Jeremy. Be happy he's finally having fun. After all, isn't that what playing games is for?
Suddenly, Jeremy realized that he had an opening, so now was his chance to help his team. And so, he left the heavy and made a break for the enemy base. As he ran through the many corridors of 2 Fort, Jeremy wondered why this was suddenly so easy. The stalemate happening at mid was so violent and chaotic that he assumed he'd have to fight even harder to get to the actual flag in the enemy base. Yet, no one was really stopping him. Not even an engineer with a sentry to prevent him from running to the flag and grabbing it. He figured that people were just not paying attention enough to notice he was making a break for it. As he rounded the corner, he saw it. Not the flag, but the intelligence. You see, TF2's aesthetic is largely based off of 60s and 70s spy culture. Think James Bond or the Manchurian Candidate. So when Capture the Flag was implemented into TF2, it was designed around resembling a spy mission of espionage and infiltration. So the original Quake Team Fortress banner was replaced with a briefcase, with vital intelligence inside. Well, at least that's what you'd think. Long after TF2's initial release, the contents of the briefcase would be retconned, from important military secrets to explicit pornography. TF2 is a strange game. Nevertheless, much of this visual storytelling went right over the head of Jeremy, who is currently laser focused on getting the first point of the game for his team. But as he grabbed the flag, he heard an announcer loudly say to every player in the lobby,
"Alert! The enemy has taken our intelligence."
Jeremy realized the danger he was in, so he booked it to the sewers. Unbeknownst to Jeremy, every single member of the red team was about to descend upon him all at once, because none of them wanted that flag captured. They wanted to continue playing the game for as long as possible, and didn't want to be thrown back into the dreaded casual queue, so they were going to stop him at all costs. But Jeremy knew that he was fast, and by the time the red team knew what was happening, he was already on his side of the map. But as he was running up the stairs, those long sightlines reared their ugly head one more time. All that work, all that effort, for nothing.
Many corridors, it's just one sewer pipeline. So Jeremy got lucky, and despite what the previous testimonies about engineer nests would have hyped up for, there are no engineers in the intel room. A setup without a payoff, but hey, Jeremy's in. Lucid goes on a quick ramble about TF2's visual design, which would have been pointless since Jeremy would have already known. Except he doesn't know.
Much of this visual storytelling went right over the head of Jeremy.
How invested has he been in this game, and for how long? Has he not watched the Meet the Team videos? Lucid says years earlier, so this design philosophy wouldn't have flown over Jeremy's head because he would have known it already. Right? Are the viewers meant to ignore that line from the first minute of the video and just assume, based on every interaction with Jeremy, that he literally knows nothing? Has he not picked up on the thematic motifs in the art style yet? Also, how does any of this count as visual storytelling? Jeremy isn't able to absorb from his surroundings that the intel is full of explicit materials, nor can he intuit that the intel used to be a Quake banner. The only thing he can glean is the color palette, style of the map, and class design that he's seen thus far, only vaguely absorbing that this is a 60s, 70s spy thriller ripoff. How would Jeremy have known anything else? Lucid is expositing for his viewers, but making it seem like Jeremy would know all this, but it goes over his head. Except it wouldn't, because Lucid previously established that Jeremy's been following the game for quite some time. Now I don't even know what Jeremy knows about the game other than that it's a shooter, which is utterly ridiculous because Jeremy should know something about the game from having followed it for years. Also, there's not explicit material in the intelligence. That's not true. There's literally no evidence for that. It's literally just a trope of I pulled it out from behind my back, because you don't actually see where the folder comes from. He pulls it out from under the camera frame. It's not even, and he pulled it out.
No, he pulled it out of his shirt, I think. He had it tucked in his thing.
No, he pulled it out
from important military secret.
No, he just whips it out from the bottom.
He did pull it out of his.
Yeah, pulled it out of his.
Yeah, you know what the joke is here? Haha, he's doing your mom.
Anyways, returning to the story, the red team will now descend upon Jeremy because they don't want the flag captured. This is fair since now the primary focus is on defense, but then Lucid says that the reason they don't want the flag to be captured is so that they can keep playing the game for as long as possible and not be thrown into the casual queue. So this video is made under the assumption that Jeremy is playing in casual mode and isn't focusing on the game mode itself as much as it is with the casual representation of it. This casual point has now gone from an ignorable discrepancy to a major plot issue and arguing point. And for as unfortunate as it is that the server resets after just one game's end, it would still be playing the game for Jeremy to capture the flag and for the red team to defend it. So by defending the flag, they are still playing the game, but so would Jeremy if he went all the way with capturing. By definition, Jeremy is playing the game, and now others respond by also playing the game. But they're doing it so that they can keep playing. Which begs the question, what were they doing before? Were they not pursuing the flag? Were they not moving for the objective? Were they not playing the game the way it was intended to its fullest? Were they just fragging? Were they being friendly? I don't know, but suddenly it's all hands on deck because they were reminded to play the game so that they could keep playing the game, or something. What this means logically is that Lucid is defining playing the game as just existing in the state of the game where actions are capable of occurring. Playing the game no longer means actually abiding by the rules and achieving the provided objective to Lucid. It simply means not being in spectator mode, assigned to either red or blue, having selected a class, and simply doing whatever you want. This could be idling, fragging, trading, playing friendly, or cheating, but it's still playing the game as long as the game doesn't end. You could just be that perpetually rotating A-posing heavy that refuses to capture the flag he's carrying, and that counts as playing the game because he's existing in a technically non-idle state. This has nothing to do with capture the flag, obviously. This is simply the result of casual mode being so poorly designed that it resets the server after one game, while also having theoretically unlimited time to end the game. That's not Jeremy's fault, of course, it's casuals. But to summarize and make it clear, Lucid is now redefining terms to suit his narrative. Playing the game simply means, and has always meant, abiding by the rules to accomplish whatever task or challenge the game provides. Now, in this video, he insists that it means simply existing in the game state while skirting the line of what can technically be considered active or inactive. There is no specification on rules of the game set, what a player should be doing, or even if there is something to do. It simply means to exist, and apparently that's all a lot of people need to have fun, and they will suddenly act like playing the game once someone else does, but only to prevent that guy from ending their so-called fun. They will sabotage his goals to suit theirs, but their goals are not aligned with the design of the game. It is aligned with their own axiological hedonism. That is absolutely insane to admit in your script, Lucid. You seriously released this? And to return to the story, the red team emerges victorious as the soldier punches a last-ditch effort rocket right at Jeremy's feet, downing the flag for 60 seconds. Even though it's on blue's side, the red team has an opportunity to set up a defense around the flag before another blue player retrieves it. They've temporarily accomplished their goals at making sure the game state continues. Meanwhile, Jeremy devolves into nihilism. All that work, all for nothing. Are you joking? You have 60 seconds to just drop down and try capturing the flag again, or at least grabbing it and dropping it to reset the timer for someone else to grab. What are you doing, Jeremy? It's not over just because you died once. What is the story, dude? Now it's just leaving out details about the game mode to suit a vibe that is utterly baseless and unearned by the narrative structure so far. This entire video is horrendously constructed in its narrative and pacing, and the script is starting to hemorrhage under the scrutiny of thinking for 2 seconds. I don't know what drove Lucid to release this video, but it clearly wasn't well thought out. But there's one more thing to discuss about this segment, something so utterly bewildering as an editing and presentation decision that I genuinely cannot tell if Lucid is being malicious to his viewers by lying or if he's a simple fool. This explosion cannot kill Jeremy. Believe it or not, I'm in contact with a couple of old cheaters and bot hosters, and they were gracious enough to provide me a visual of what happened in Jeremy's circumstance. Shout out to Jorge and Sundermore for the footage. In this part of 2 Fort, the blast damage cannot extend above the stairs and past it. Lucid's footage indicates that the rocket exploded around the middle of the stairway, killing Jeremy with the blast damage. I tested this myself at the time by just firing a rocket around the given area and even closer than was presented, and combined with the footage from a cheat program that displays the blast hitbox of a rocket on the surface being provided, this situation simply cannot happen. So he dies. Where's the explosion frame? Okay, so... Sorry. It should be... Actually, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I don't think the rocket would have made it to Jeremy in time. Like... Okay, so the explosion point is here on the stairs. This is going to be pretty important. So, when the soldier fires the rocket from right here, Scout is already right here in the midst of a double jump. I don't think the rocket can make it there in time. Like, from the stock rocket launcher. Or the original that is used. Yeah, there's no way. Hang on, let me clock that. That's almost 2 seconds. That's 2 seconds. I guarantee you Scout can get up there faster than that. But even assuming that it did, like, Scout's right here. He's by the fire extinguisher. And the rocket... What's the image again? I need to see the image again. The explosion is right about here. Right there. Right? So, how do I fire it? I'm going to fire it right here. So I'm going to, like, back up against the wall. Oh yeah, no, there's no way. Even if it's at the top of the stair, even if it's right here, the random crit didn't even kill me. It's like, even if I move in a little closer, it's still not. No, there's no way. There's no way this would kill at all. He didn't even make it look like it was an actual rocket, dude. Oh my gosh. He was right here in the midst of a double jump. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Soldier fires the rocket in 1, 2. Yeah, no, I'm already right here by the time the rocket gets there. There's no way. On the high end, it's like 2.5 seconds, in which case I'm already up here on the landing. But even on the low end, if you say like maybe 1.5 seconds, I'm already here, which we already established the rocket can't hit me because of this object and the wall. So, like, this is impossible. This whole situation is impossible.
Oh wait, I know what part of the video this is gonna be for.
Yeah. Holy crap, that took forever. Come down again.
Okay.
Now try to be as far to the outside as you can. I'm going to hook it as far to the right on the stair as I can. Just to see what would happen. And go.
I think that was perfect.
When you hear the explosion, where are you on the staircase?
I was like right here.
And you stopped moving to see it happen, or?
No, I like went up. I mean, I turned back, but.
Okay, got it.
I don't think the viewer's gonna see that.
3, 2, 1, fire. Okay, that hit me a little bit, but I also didn't move as far outside as he did. So let me.
Okay, I'll move on to like the edge of the grate.
Okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, fire. Okay.
Did that hit you?
It is hitting me. I'm trying to figure out how I didn't hit you doing the same thing.
I'm aiming at like basically the exact spot.
Oh, it's probably because you are very close to the edge. Okay, now move it towards the left and try to hit like just the middle of the staircase. Still towards the top,
so like that?
Yeah, something like that.
That area? Okay.
Maybe a little bit farther to the right, but yeah. 3, 2, 1, fire. Jeez, I wound up in the same spot as you. We'll do that one more time. And move it a little more to the right this time, just so that it can get a little closer. Just to see.
Okay, I tried. All right.
3, 2, 1, fire. Yeah, I hugged the wall to get to the fire extinguisher. No freaking way that connects. It's been debunked. We did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain for people watching, like, I'm recording your audio, but like, can you explain for people watching what all these hitboxes mean and like what everything looks like actually means? Because that would help.
So essentially, Pisgram, or Amalgam in this case, has this area of blast radius effect where it kind of has it on like one side of the wall and how far across it spreads, as you can see if you look at my screen. But it doesn't actually show anywhere else. Like, obviously it's not just restricted to this wall, it's going to blast like over here as well, but it doesn't show that. They have lures for Lamalbox that do the same thing, but I don't use Lamalbox, so my understanding is limited on that. So, as you can see, it's over here. It looks like it's just hitting here and not like behind the stairs or anything. Which I guess it's kind of not, because... Wait. Let's stand right here. Where I am. Right next to me. Yeah. And... No, so it's not going to hit like anywhere behind these stairs unless you... See, I really got damaged by that. So, what that means is... This is the maximum blast radius. If I aim like here, on the steps... So this... and this are essentially the same thing, even though they look way different. But this and this, like, this is still going to hit the same place. And Jeremy was here, the blast was like around there.
So wait, so that hitbox that's being displayed right now, does this make me immune to the hit, or like can you fire it right here?
You will still get hit by it, just because this is like, this is what it's showing. This doesn't mean it's all that can hit. It's just showing like on what surface the blast is radiusing. So if I do this...
Oh, it's a surface. Okay. Oh, okay. It's not the full globe. It's just a 2D surface.
It's just a 2D surface, yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1, fire. My gosh, I'm already up here to the stair. All right. 3, 2, 1, fire. My gosh, I'm already up here to the stair. All right. 3, 2, 1, fire. Bro, it didn't even make it by the time I got to the fire extinguisher. All right, 3, 2, 1, fire. Bro, it didn't even make it by the time I got to the fire extinguisher. This indicates one of two things. Either Lucid knew this and intentionally ragdolled Jeremy in this scene, knowing full well that this wasn't possible, or Lucid simply didn't bother to check if it was possible. At best, he's an idiot, and at worst, he's lying to his audience. This scene, mechanically speaking, is an impossibility. Jeremy is too far away from the rocket, and the rocket is too low. Even on a critical hit, the blast radius doesn't change, and Jeremy should have lived to make it up through his fortress and enjoy the team-wide benefit of critical damage upon capturing. But he doesn't, because of a literal impossibility that Lucid drew up out of thin air. As a result, it comes off as though Lucid is trying to keep Jeremy from experiencing a more positive side of Capture the Flag and its mechanics. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
As he sat spectating his own death, waiting to respawn, he thought to himself, why did any of that happen? It was so easy to walk past everyone and get into the base, so why was it so hard to get out? It didn't seem like his own team wanted to help him capture the flag. They were all still doing their own thing, fighting and dying over and over again on the bridge, explosive jumping everywhere. They were even people he ran past earlier who weren't playing the game at all. They were just dancing off to the side. Why? What was the point? He went all that distance to get the flag, and no one even cared. Why did his team seem so unaffected by everything? It was almost as if none of them wanted to win. But without winning, what was he supposed to do? Isn't that what playing games is for?
Wait, but you can't spectate your own death. You can only spectate other players when you die. Huh? Again, with the isn't that what playing games is for? Stop doing that. That's so incredibly disingenuous, and now you just come off as smug. What is this video's goal? Own the tryhards and sweats? And again, there's no logical through line to explain Jeremy's behavior. He has every reason to be motivated to keep trying because he actually was almost there, but now he's demoralized arbitrarily. Even if his team isn't helping, he was almost there. He could make it. According to Lucid's footage, there wasn't even anyone nearby. All he needs to do is use the right spectator cameras and get a good view of the situation before he respawns and figure out what to do. But that's not even brought up as a possibility. Again, a bit more subjectively right now, the relatability is shattered because this same thing happened to me when I started playing, but all I did was pick the flag up and capture anyways, and it was fine because the enemy team did what they were supposed to do, stop me from capping at least for a moment. What on earth is Lucid's point? He's twisting the narrative to suit his point, again, even though the point of the narrative was to prove his false premises from the start, but now he's not even trying to make his story make sense, and it makes him look like he doesn't know how to argue his points in any coherent way. This is slowly becoming insulting to the intelligence of his viewers. Also, the audio change when he says that last sentence is a bit telling. I don't know if it's meant to be interpreted that way, but it's significant enough to where it is compounded with a sudden lack of background music. Maybe it's just ADR and I'm looking too much into it, but it's something I found weird.
TF2's Capture the Flag, after years and years of updates, has become a horribly designed game mode. With games devolving into either complete steamrolls or hour-long stalemates, and not much in between.
You haven't proven that at all.
Not to mention that this design flaw has been exacerbated through Valve's many changes to TF2 over the years.
Which design flaw? The map design you didn't outline the parameters for? The supposed imbalance you didn't even bother to elaborate on? You've mentioned a few, but now you're not specifying. The flaw that Jeremy died in a game where people kill each other? What are you referring to, Lucid? Please clarify.
CTF never felt like the most focused, objective-based game mode, but now capping on a CTF server basically just interrupts what everyone's been forced for 9 years to accept as a laid-back, endless meme lobby, and makes them sit through a farcical map vote as if anyone is ever going to vote for anything other than 2Fort, and then a completely pointless loading screen and pre-round timer.
This clip is, again, taken out of context. The actual context for this segment is actually the previous Richter segment that was already played, and in the unfiltered thoughts, he does indeed make note of this flaw being a fault of casual, not of the game.
For 9 years, Capture the Flag and Payload Race have had their round timer entirely gutted, meaning there's no guaranteed end to any game until one team wins. A game of CTF can now last multiple hours when it used to typically last 30 to 50 minutes, and with no stalemates or team scrambles anymore, it's essentially turned the game mode into TF2 purgatory. Switching out time limits for round limits and removing scramble and meet your match is one of the biggest mistakes Valve ever made with TF2, but practically no other game mode was hurt by it more than CTF. CTF never felt like the most focused, objective-based game mode, but now capping on a CTF server basically just interrupts what everyone's been forced for 9 years to accept as a laid-back, endless meme lobby, and makes them sit through a farcical map vote as if anyone is ever going to vote for anything other than 2Fort, and then a completely pointless loading screen and pre-round timer. You just never get the satisfaction of winning and moving on to the next experience, because CTF lobbies are still fundamentally broken in TF2 after nearly a decade.
So once again, Lucid has paced this segment with the rest of his video to insinuate that this is a direct flaw of the game mode itself, but Richter was actually saying that this is a flaw with casual. The level to which this is blatantly dishonest is astounding to me, and I am grateful that Lucid even released this unfiltered addendum in the first place. I was originally quite displeased considering that he has been playing the game since its earliest days as a small child, so he ought to have known better. But with the full context that is so graciously and fortunately available, I am now left to wonder how Lucid thought it was a good idea to chop up Richter's speech so manipulatively.
If there's a pretty significant skill discrepancy, the game's going to be over in 2 minutes, and then the server resets and boots everyone out.
Again, Zesty's complaint is just baseless. If one team is better, the game will end faster. Well, maybe it wouldn't if people paid more attention or, I don't know, got good. Though I guess people would say that I shouldn't say that because that would be telling people how to play the game. But if you have a complaint about the game state, maybe affect the game state in your favor. Just a thought. Actually, no. Reasonably, the only response to this should just be, so what? So what if people are good and result in the game ending faster? What's going to happen? A punishment for being good? Also, again, casual flaw, not CTF flaw. The effects of casual impacting the game is unfortunate, yes, but it is not the fault of certain players or teams being good that casual makes the game end so quickly. They're just playing the game. Stop conflating player output with a game mode flaw. The dishonesty is getting tiresome. I hate to start having my criticisms shrink, as I am by no means concerned about the runtime of this video, but they're just repeating points they think they've made when they've either misidentified the issue, won't clarify what they mean, or outright redefine terms. It's not like I'm trying to keep the video short, as is probably evident by now. It's just that Lucid's video is becoming redundant, and I'm only halfway through it. There's still 15 minutes left? I don't even know what he has to say for the remainder of the video. Conclude Jeremy's so-called character arc, I guess?
The majority of the maps are designed atrociously.
You still haven't proven that, either. You made a claim and barely quantified your statements, nor did you provide alternatives or solutions whatsoever. You just whined about it.
And defense is as easy as hitting 6 on your keyboard at the start of the match.
Well, as I already proved and discussed, no, it's not just that easy. If that were true, Jeremy could have simply started playing as engineer per the counsel of a friend, or entirely independently, and achieved satisfaction in a job well done. Only it would have turned out the same way it always does. Though I suppose Lucid didn't want a boring story.
It's a brain-dead, horribly designed, no-thoughts, head-empty game mode.
You haven't quantified that, again, and don't project upon other people with the no-thoughts, head-empty stuff. You have no idea that that's a universal truth among players. Speak for yourself, pal.
But paradoxically, that's what people love about it.
People like playing dumb?
Capture the Flag isn't good as a game mode in the same way that Payload or Attack Defend are. It's good in the way that Web Fishing, Club Penguin, or an old Minecraft server are. As a place for people to congregate, hang out, and make friends. Capture the Flag's design works perfectly as a playground. for people to hang out and enjoy the game in a low-stakes environment that teaches you the fundamentals of TF2's gameplay, world, and teamwork. It doesn't matter that the games never end, or that reaching the flag is often near impossible, because the objective of Capture the Flag isn't really the flag itself, but the gradual journey it takes to get there.
Oh my gosh, he said the thing. It's not about the destination but the journey. Not about the goal but the friends we made along the way. Gosh, I hate being able to predict this sort of thing. In all seriousness though, this is just belittling at its finest. No, not even that. It's condescending. Capture the Flag is a perfectly good game mode, but people have convinced themselves that it's just as valuable as Club Penguin. It was never designed to be a playground, but the player base has perverted it into that. At best, it's a training ground for new players, but no one ever takes it seriously beyond that, because that isn't fun, or whatever nonsensical excuse they use. It shouldn't be reduced to that sort of low-stakes environment, but people have convinced themselves that that's legitimate through bellyaching and platitudes like this.
In real life, Capture the Flag is a game that's flawed, in many of the same ways as its TF2 counterpart. If you've ever played it, you know that puppy guarding is the dominant strategy, and that defending the flag is as easy as placing a wall of people in front of it and calling it a day. But the issue with that strategy, as dominant as it is that it is really, really boring. No one wants to venture out into 90-degree heat in the midst of a summer day to play a game of Capture the Flag that looks like this. Because this game has never been about winning. It's been about teamwork and having a good time with your friends.
Okay, again, he's just stating something as objective when he has no business doing so. He can't quantify it, especially when generalizing to every person by saying, if you've ever played it, you just know this to be true. Well, I have played it. At one point, it was my favorite game as a kid. I played it at plenty of summer camps and with friends at parks, and I'd love to still play it in airsoft or paintball arenas. Regardless of the heat, I know I'd enjoy myself with a bunch of other guys to fight for an objective and have a good time doing so. And besides, you even say that. It's about teamwork and having a good time. Yes, but teamwork towards what? You can't just be a team without a goal to achieve as a collective unit. You need to be exhibiting teamwork towards something. It's not a principle for just hanging in a vacuum. So what would be teamwork being exhibited and exerted towards? Perhaps, I don't know, the objective of the game, and perhaps, wild thought, value can be found in accomplishing the task as a team and growing in friendship alongside strengthening important skills such as team cohesion and problem solving on an individual level and a group level. Has that occurred to you at all during this entire script, Lucid? On the puppy guarding point, this is just a blatant misrepresentation of IRL Capture the Flag, since many people will socially play the game with rules set in place to account for puppy guarding. To delve into the mechanics I've used a little bit, two teams can have a flag set at the endpoints of a relatively symmetrical course. When playing in person, my experience has been that two people draw a line down the middle of the playing field, marking safe territory for the corresponding teams. If a player crosses that line, they are subject to be tagged and can be taken to jail, only freed when broken out by another player who makes it over without being tagged. After that, the previously jailed player gets a free walk back to his side of the field. Flags could be guarded, but only from a certain distance to prevent players from simply sitting on it. If the flag was captured but dropped before reaching the other side of the field, the flag could not be replaced and had to stay where it was. Once the flag crosses to the capturing team's side, since the enemy cannot tag from that side, the flag has been officially captured. I've played this game with 5 flags on each side, and even where there was an opportunity for a no man's land dividing the territories in which players could fight to bring people over to their side, tag them, and bring them to jail. These are just a few suggestions, and I'm sure there are many more variations, but Lucid just generalizes all of CTF play in person to contain puppy guarding as the dominant strategy, when it absolutely isn't. Even if most Capture the Flag variants functioned like this, he can't say that every single variant accounts for this, since there are even variants where guarding isn't allowed and both teams have to play purely from an offensive standpoint. I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm genuinely shocked that Lucid would go as far as to say, if you've played the game, you know that this occurs, when there is absolutely no guarantee of that at all.
In TF2, it's the exact same way. The story of Capture the Flag isn't a driven, focused fight between red and blue, with constant progress toward a consistent goal. Instead, it's a series of vignettes, and smaller stories that players have between each other, talking in chat about whatever's happening in and out of the game, barely paying attention while you battle for hours on end with your comrades, not because you want to win, but because it's fun. And after all, isn't that what playing games is for?
The levels of retardation in these statements are reaching critical mass. What do you mean, the story of CTF? Do you mean Jeremy's individual experience that you've decided so carelessly to use as a basis for your statements? Do you mean the objective nature of the game mode that you barely even bothered to try and quantify? All this flowery language is a distraction from the fact that Lucid desperately needs to keep his agenda at the forefront. And after all that's been discussed, it would probably be a bad thing that CTF isn't a driven and focused fight for a consistent goal in the same way that there is for other game modes. Constant progress is a bit of a weird term, since that's quite difficult to quantify when it comes to mechanics and gameplay. TF2 lends itself to tug-of-war situations all the time when teams take the high ground against each other, but it doesn't even happen all the time. There's no way to measure this, but he's just saying it because he can. Will he say how or what it all means? Nah, why bother? What he describes as smaller stories and vignettes as a result of actions barely related to gameplay can simply be described as axiological hedonism. Axiological hedonism, for those who don't know, is the belief that, quite simply, pleasure is the source of all value. However much pleasure it produces, the more valuable it becomes. This ideal is the foundation for people's belief systems that rely upon refusing to objectively quantify actions, situations, or functions, and simply relegate everything down to vibes and how it made someone feel. Combined with the low-effort instant gratification that TF2 is sadly now capable of providing, and the recipe for disaster creates exactly what Lucid says: battle for hours on end with no goal, but for the sheer thrill of it, the fun of it. And when that instant gratification is punctured by dying too early or being reminded that there is actually a game designed to be played in the battleground people have now perverted for their selfish means, the anger flows, and that fight now becomes oriented not towards the goals designed to be achieved, but the insistence to extend the mindlessness as much as possible. Because after all, isn't that what playing games is for? To have fun? Well, what if people who play to win are having fun? What if people feel as though they're only having fun if they actually try? What if they want other people to try so that more fun can be had? Nah, ignore that, because they're not experiencing fun right. They're not playing the game, they're just ruining everyone else's fun. Despite fun being entirely personal and impossible to enforce on other people. Though considering the state of this game right now, people seem to have done a pretty good job at trying. What an embarrassment of a community, and what a horrible message to convey in a video. The video now assumes that people are retarded enough to actually fall into the temptations of sloth and mindless low-effort pleasure, and that if they don't, they're wrong. Great philosophy there, Lucid.
As Jeremy spawns back in, he sees his friend the Heavy, on the verge of jumping off the battlements to his almost certain death. He debates for a second whether he should keep playing or not. What's the point if his team isn't going to help him? But he knows that the Heavy is just going to get himself killed without his help, so he decides to stick by him for just a little while longer. 3 hours later. Any urge to capture the flag had completely left Jeremy's mind by this point. He was too busy double-teaming enemy mercenaries with his new friend. At one point, he was low on health, and the Heavy even threw some sort of sandwich item which healed him back to full. It was a kind gesture, and it felt like they were the perfect tag team, able to destroy anyone and everyone. Just the two of them. It was the most fun that he'd ever had playing a video game. He'd never felt such a connection with someone online like this before. It was special. As Jeremy thanked the Heavy for securing yet another kill with him, the Heavy said that it was time for him to head out. He said bye, and the Heavy disconnected. Jeremy wondered if he'd ever see him again. Right on cue, Jeremy received a Steam notification. The Heavy had sent him a friend request, so he had his answer.
Now, there isn't a problem with playing games for self-gratification. But like many other activities that people partake in, I am of the belief, not opinion, belief, that people ought to do everything they can with some level of serious intent. People don't work out just to work out. They want to look a certain way, or get healthier, or perhaps there's another goal that they need to hit for some other reason. I used to ride my bike a lot, not just because it's fun to ride. That's more so a tangential benefit that most people would focus on, but I understand that that's not the point. The point is that there is a development in the mind that occurs when exploring new areas all on one's own, alongside the benefit of exercise, absorbing sunlight, breathing fresh air, learning to navigate roads outdoors, and interactions with strangers by oneself. And I believe, too, that video games are subject to the same metrics. Even when playing the Wii with my parents and siblings as a child, there was an external benefit in the act of socializing with my family and getting to bond with them over the enjoyable experiences of Wii Sports, Wii Play, Smash Bros. Brawl, and Mario Kart. In the realm of shooter games, I have found that the external benefits are things like hand-eye coordination, problem-solving skills, increasing one's ability to think on the fly, especially on harder difficulties, and understanding multifaceted approaches to scenarios that appear the same on the surface when generalized to that extent, but need different paths taken to a unique solution when examined more thoroughly. In TF2, the primary skill that the game is designed to facilitate, cultivate, and elevate is teamwork. Quake Team Fortress and Team Fortress Classic were built with the idea that teams would actually play together as teams. Even when QTF was ported to Quake World and became Quake World Team Fortress, there was still an idea that players would actually bother to play as a team to some extent, since that was initially the point, to break out from standard team deathmatch where players ran around grabbing weapons on the map. There would be objectives, and certain classes would get certain weapons, health pools, and armor values. The first game mode, of course, was Capture the Flag. Over the years, however, TF2 started as a vaguely loyal successor to the Team Fortress formula, to the dilapidated mess witnessed today. CTF has lost all purpose and meaning because people figured out that if everyone's just a random, then who cares what anyone else is doing? People devalued the importance of teamwork, and thus aimed to kill the spirit of Team Fortress. Capture the Flag, being centered around an objective that requires players to do work, would suffer more than other game modes from the low-effort instant gratification culture that infects so many games today because, quite simply, CTF requires work. It takes effort to get all the way to one side of the map and bring a flag all the way back. It takes effort to work with a team when the flag is downed but not yet returned. It takes work to mount a defense or offense successfully. And for as complex as the fights surrounding them can be, it takes far more work than just standing on a metal disc or a cart and letting it move for you. This is something that I think is a great shame, as it speaks to how poorly built the market of video games currently is. Games don't require significant challenges anymore outside of legacy titles, which is what makes new and challenging games quite the novelty, since now that's all they are. Once upon a time they were commonplace, now you're lucky to get one of those a year. It also speaks to just how far the human mind has fallen in terms of development and desire. People don't want those kinds of games anymore because they're not fun, yet they cannot objectively quantify fun because it is inherently subjective. And yet, by the narrative that Lucid has built thus far, Jeremy is now playing the game the right way and having fun the right way, or at least experiencing the right kind of fun. I dare anyone in the comments to prove to me how this isn't a double standard and a blatant example of hypocrisy, incoherent philosophy, and poor script writing. Also, how did Jeremy play for 3 hours without someone on the server capping at least once, and him getting to experience 10 seconds of critical damage? Or even the other team capping and having to defend from the critical onslaught. 1 hour is believable, but 3? That's just impossible.
Now that he had had so much practice with his heavy friend, Jeremy thought he could finally do what he had wanted to do all along: win the game. As Jeremy was making yet another attempt to infiltrate the enemy base, he was getting much further than he typically did. But as he entered the enemy's courtyard, there he was, the obstacle that obscured Jeremy's eyes from the prize: Krieg 77, the red team's engineer. Unlike Jeremy, Fitz had chosen engineer as his first class, and as Jeremy and the Heavy were fighting and having a good time, Fitz had joined the game and built his little sentry nest on 2 Fort, as he had seen plenty of other people do in YouTube videos time and time again. But before he could get it to level 3, Jeremy and the Heavy just kept destroying it, over and over again, ruining his precious work. But now that the Heavy was gone, Jeremy alone was no match for his mechanized might. Fitzkrieg was intent on never letting anyone get the intel, under any circumstances. Jeremy had no chance of competing. He was Scout, the class that Engineer was probably best at dealing with.
So Jeremy's friend is gone, and now he refocuses his sights on capturing the flag. But alas, he runs into an Engineer without the assistance of his heavy friend anymore. Such is the way of the world. Engineer is indeed quite capable of dealing with Scouts, perhaps more so than any other class, especially with the level 3 sentry gun. From what Lucid says, the Engineer's fun was being ruined by Jeremy and the heavy getting the jump on him so frequently. Bad luck, I suppose, but again, such is the way of the world. Just because Engineer was picked doesn't mean it's going to be easy to win, and it certainly doesn't mean the team is carried. But the heavy is gone, so the Engineer can breathe for a while and prepare for other threats while easily dispatching Jeremy. This is fine, so why am I getting the idea that Lucid thinks this is a bad thing?
Every so often, there's just that one guy that's like, you know what? I'm going to go scout and just win the game myself within 3 minutes. And then everyone just gets kind of annoyed because like, oh, well, I guess instead of exploring the map, someone's going to have to bunker down and go engineer.
Every time he even sniffed the enemy courtyard, Fitz would be there with a sentry or a shotgun, ready to stuff his efforts in one foul swoop. Jeremy had found his antagonist, but he knew that Scout wasn't going to cut it.
I don't know what Lister means here. Again, this just sounds like complaining with no substance. He oversimplifies Scout's role to pick this style of offense and then win, only to make Engineer out to be some pick this style of defense and win. This is how TF2 works. Some classes counter other classes to prevent their strengths from overbearing the team at large. And Lister whines about not being able to explore the map because Engineer just has to be selected or the game will end. But if the outcome of the game really didn't matter and it's all for the non-defined fun, then nobody has to go Engineer. I mean, nobody had to go Engineer anyways. It's a free will game. Nobody's forcing anyone to move to any other class. Yes, the casual queue problem is a bummer, but again, not a problem with CTF. It's a problem with casual. Besides, the appeal to emotion by everyone being annoyed is just levying subjective arguments again. There's no substance to this quotation at all. This is a waste of time in the video. Lucid concludes the section by announcing Jeremy's curiosity to playing other classes. I'm interested in seeing how he forces this character's direction further towards the agenda.
So Jeremy's eyes began to wander to the other offensive options he could use to capture the flag. Surely one of these classes would allow him to completely destroy the other team and win the game. One of Capture the Flag's biggest strengths, after all, is its ability to make all of the classes feel useful, and have a role that feels natural and organic.
I think it's a game mode where every class has its purpose, where you have offense classes going for intel, defense classes defending intel, and support classes either defending intel or infiltrating to go support the offense classes going to get the intel, that kind of thing.
Every class in the game has a different way of fulfilling their own unique role in the team fight, and Jeremy was going to find the perfect choice to best his newly found adversary.
This is good, probably the first objectively correct thing Lucid has stated without a blemish in this entire video, and Zesty supports it quite well. I don't even need to remark on it further, as I would just wind up repeating what they already said. I'm glad to know the video isn't a total waste.
Soldier was the next logical choice, arguably the most versatile class in the game. In Capture the Flag, his use is mitigated somewhat due to his slow speed, especially in maps like 2-Fort or Turbine with low ceilings. But that's if you're playing the objective, which, as we've established, no one is.
I suppose you've established that, but I certainly don't agree with just accepting it as such. It doesn't seem like quite the fair representation of CTF to just talk about people who don't play the game. And besides, wasn't Jeremy trying to play the objective by finding a class to bypass Fitzkrieg the Engineer, so that he could, capture the flag? I can't tell if you forgot your own point or if you just double-backed hastily.
So Jeremy knew that he could use the soldier to put the enemy team in the meat grinder over and over again. He was actually doing really well in his first few lives as soldier, and he found it easy to push further into the enemy team's base by himself. But, unlike Scout, Soldier was slow. Genuinely too slow for Jeremy to enjoy.
So Jeremy was producing good results with Soldier as far as fragfesting and pushing the enemy team around, which as Lucid attempted to establish counts as playing the game, but now he's not enjoying himself after getting better results overall because Soldier is slow? What?
Soldier's walking speed is one of the slowest in the game, which Jeremy wasn't accustomed to after playing Scout. Not to mention, the verticality of a lot of CTF maps incentivizes the explosive classes to blast jump, and Jeremy had no idea how to do any of that. So there was little chance he was going to be able to win the game all by himself, and he had realized that no one else in the lobby was interested in helping.
Why didn't you just say that Jeremy wasn't used to the slow walking speed? That's all you needed to say. You didn't need to hype Jeremy up as playing well but not having fun. Just say that Jeremy wasn't accustomed to the speed and that he didn't know how to rocket jump. That's all you required. Also, Jeremy's now trying to win the game all by himself? I mean, considering how Lucid has built Jeremy as this moron who doesn't think to ask his team for help, I guess that makes Jeremy's character consistent, but a consistently idiotic character doesn't make for good storytelling. And just to make it clear, Lucid hasn't even mentioned Jeremy asking his team directly for help. He hasn't used text or voice chat to ask for help, so his team not helping him is not their fault at all. What does he expect people to just join him arbitrarily and that all the help he needs will just get handed to him at some point? I don't know why Jeremy is a fool, and I'm getting a bit annoyed having to have that idea drilled into my head with nothing backing it up.
No one's gonna help you go and fight the sentries if you are typing in the chat like, guys, come on, we gotta take this. You're gonna get like, dude, it's 2-4, like, shut up. And you're gonna get like vote kicked or something.
Yeah. So the viewers are being told that typing in chat to accomplish the goal of the game is a waste of time because you'll get ignored, nagged, and possibly removed from the game. Let me repeat that. You can be potentially removed from the game because you wanted to play the game the intended way. The reasoning? It's 2-4, bro. Are you kidding? Does this standard apply with any other goal? Like, can I ask people to help kill the heavy or the sniper or dismantle a fight going on in sewers?
Next was Pyro. Now this was something Jeremy could get behind. A character that required absolutely zero aiming ability. Just hold left click and kill people. Now this was something Jeremy was good at. The problem with Pyro in CTF is that, unlike his role in most other game modes, she's best played more defensively. Due to the lack of solid flank routes in most CTF maps, as well as Pyro's relatively slow walking speed, it's hard for them to close the distance and make an offensive push toward the other team without getting mowed down. The Pyro is often forced to either stay with his team for a push, or play defensive with the engineers at the base, fending off incoming spies and scouts from the intel. These roles, while fun and very dynamic with a few of Pyro's unlocks, aren't very conducive to Jeremy's adrenaline-addled, objective-focused win-now mentality. He wanted a class that could help him win against Fitzkrieg. He wanted to see that Texans Gibbs all over the walls of the red team's base. And every time he even sniffed that sentry, it was lights out for the Pyro.
Way to misrepresent Pyro's potential, man. I know Jeremy's new, but surely he's been playing the game long enough to understand that the classes have more than just their primary weapons. I mean, he literally used a melee to kill a medic soldier combo earlier, so what? Jeremy has to be able to intuit that he can use a shotgun if people backpedal too far away from his flames. And does he even know about how Air Blast can push people and repel projectiles? I thought he had been following this game for quite some time. He's been in this match for supposedly longer than 3 entire hours, most of which was spent playing with a teammate against all sorts of threats, I imagine. So what's the deal? Why does Lucid suddenly have to reduce Pyro to WM1? I wouldn't say that Pyro is best to play more defensively, even in CTF. I know the ambush role is the design intention, but I know people use the class in a lot of different contexts, especially with newer unlocks, so I wouldn't generalize his role this quickly. Lucid does bring up unlocks, though, and structures his sentence to indicate that Jeremy knows about the unlocks, possibly even tried them, but he doesn't care enough to keep going because it doesn't help him take down the engineer. Fine, I suppose, because yeah, Pyro isn't the best at dealing with engineers by himself. Although I will say that Jeremy's attitude is really weird. He went from being fine to just goof around in the server to now being adrenaline-addled, objective-driven, win-now-oriented. This is all after encountering just one engineer. I don't understand how someone can shift like this on a dime, but the narrative has shattered all reasonability and logic by this point, so I guess we press on. Though again, painting Jeremy as a sudden crackhead that desperately needs to win makes him come off as incompetent in the other direction, as if you're trying to make people who want to play the game look bad. But I'm sure I'm looking too far into it.
Next up was Demoman, the class that Jeremy had died to the most since he started playing TF2. It's like Soldier, but with more options, right? As he started to play Demoman, he immediately understood why so many people were playing this class on the other team. He was broken.
I didn't know Jeremy was dying so much to Demoman. Would have been nice to add some setup and payoff for that point, but whatever. Also broken?
Well, not actually. Demoman has a slew of exploitable weaknesses that different classes can take advantage of. But for Jeremy, the fresh install, Demoman was a gift from God. It was so easy to just place sticky bombs on the bridge or near the enemy base's entrances, and then just watch enemies run into them and die. He was even getting good enough to start baiting enemies into his traps. It was fun. even if he wasn't making all that much progress toward the objective.
Why does Lucid's footage not show the sentry gun in the spot where it normally was? That's kind of narrative breaking, dude. You're not going to address that at all? I know it's Lucid's gameplay for the sake of examples, but I was expecting a bit more consistency to at least try showing yourself as Jeremy. Though you messed that up earlier too, so perhaps I'm stating the obvious a bit too much here.
You see, Demoman is already an incredibly versatile class in more balanced game modes of TF2, being able to excel both offensively and defensively while providing constant area coverage for his team. He's incredibly powerful, but he could be a little hard for new players to get the hang of, and he's often overwhelmed by the faster classes who will swarm a badly positioned Demoman near instantly in a game mode like Payload. However, in Capture the Flag, many of these issues are negated severely. Because of how easy it is to defend the objective, Demoman as a whole is buffed by CTF. The intelligence isn't a moving objective like the Payload cart, and it doesn't have a significant amount of flanks to defend like a King of the Hill point. This design causes players to all funnel through very specific areas in mass groups, which is the ideal situation for Demoman to perform well on. But even though he was excellent at dealing with a lot of other classes, his roadblock, once again, was Fitzkrieg, who'd regularly rush down Jeremy with his shotgun and pistol. Jeremy knew that Demoman was close to the answer. He knew that if Fitz was distracted enough, he could take his sentry from a distance. But for now, with his current skill level, it just wasn't happening. He had to move on to someone else.
So Demoman is apparently buffed by CTF as a game mode. That's the first I've heard of such a thing. It's not nearly that easy to defend a point with Demoman, especially if you're playing all by yourself, as Lucid has established Jeremy to be. And it's not very easy to capture the flag either. But this class should be, technically, an incredible foil for Fitzkrieg, since sticky bombs and grenades make quick work of the sentry gun, and hopefully of the engineer as well. But Jeremy's new, and projectile aim is difficult, I assume, because he keeps dying to the engineer sporting a shotgun and pistol. Fine, I guess, but he should have stayed on this class, since this would give him an incredible advantage if he figured out how to approach from the right angle. He doesn't bother to, I assume, so he just moves on. Disappointing, but at this point I can only keep watching. As for the map design negating weaknesses, I would disagree, as the weaknesses still exist and can still be viably exploited. For one thing, his running speed is still outpaced by a scout. He's still just as strong as a pyro in terms of a health pool. Spies exist, snipers exist, and Ubercharge exists. It's just suddenly ignored because it's 2 Fort, bro. Stop playing to win. Also, the footage used makes Jeremy look like an utter dolt. Again. He presumably hears the sentry, backpedals, and he doesn't even try shooting at the engineer. He just accepts his fate.
He briefly tried Medic, but he quickly got bored when he realized that he couldn't effectively kill anyone by himself. Medic in CTF is a character whose role is largely de-emphasized. In other game modes, he's at his best when he's helping his team capture the objective, using Uber as the fundamental push-pull for his team and helping them break the enemy's defenses. When no one is playing the objective, this role obviously becomes less important. Without an objective to keep the stakes high, the cost of dying becomes next to nothing. People aren't really in constant need for heals when losing health doesn't cost them much of anything. As such, the medic's role is often just to help his teammates do stupid stuff, pulling off insane kills that wouldn't be possible without the extra overheal. When Jeremy played medic, all he was doing was helping other people get kills, and helping his teammates who were actively avoiding the objective wasn't really something he found much enjoyment in. Not to mention that it got him no closer to Fitzkrieg.
Yeah, when nobody actually plays the game, Medic does tend to suffer since he's inevitably facilitating nothing. It's a means to an ever-changing circular end, and it ultimately leaves Medic reduced to a points farmer. It's sad, yes, but unfortunately Lucid is right. When people are shallow and narrow-minded enough to avoid the objective, Medic does become pointless to play.
Staring once more at the class selection screen, he considered his options. He could try going heavy, but he had already seen from playing with his heavy friend that he was way too slow to do any capping without help from an Uber push. Engineer was too defensive to help with capping, and he didn't want to stoop to the same level as Fitz. That left 2 classes in particular that Jeremy thought might help him in his rivalry against Fitz. Switching to Sniper, he instantly understood why this class was so widely used in Capture the Flag. He could kill any class in an instant from anywhere on the map.
This just isn't true. 5 classes, yeah, but it requires careful aim on one class that moves fast and sporadically, one that knows he's a major target, one he should never be seeing, one that's just him all over again, and one that's designed to exploit his built-in weaknesses. Other classes, they require some kind of charge assuming they're at full health. This is just going to be an anti-sniper agenda, isn't it?
No wonder so many snipers had stacked themselves on the battlements like a pack of hyenas hungry for a meal.
This does not happen nearly as often as people exaggerate. I recently joined a game that didn't even have snipers on my team for 10 full minutes. It's not regular to stack 5 snipers in 2 fort.
This class was absolutely ridiculous. It was blatantly obvious why so many people enjoyed this character, but he wasn't really Jeremy's speed. It's not like playing sniper was really accomplishing anything. He could probably zone out for hours and just shoot people's heads.
Just shoot people's heads, yeah, because it's really that easy, especially for a new kid.
But the reality is that all he was doing was preventing people from playing the game, which in turn prevented his own team from playing the game, and overall just created less action on the bridge of 2 fort, and less fun for everyone involved.
Wait, how does that work? Preventing people from playing the game? Yeah, they die in a first-person shooter game. Would you make this claim about any other method of dying? Or no, wait, sorry, I forget the anti-sniper agenda. It's just sniper because he's long range. Right. Also, how does killing the enemy team prevent your own team from playing the game? Wouldn't that help them complete the objective? Which, by the way, is the objectively appropriate definition of playing the game. I'm not going to accept playing the game as just mindless killing, since if that's true, then sniper complaints are utterly pointless, because they're just doing the same thing everyone else is doing. Also, screw the fun, that's not helping any argument. Although, I guess no argument is being made presently, it's just a sniper vent, because people are contractually obligated to include those these days, I guess.
Jeremy felt like he was ruining the fun for everyone else, and not really gaining anything from it for himself. He thought he might be able to somehow fire at Fit's sentry from a distance, but unfortunately for him, there was just no way to be far enough to hit the sentry without instantly being swarmed by the enemy team. Frankly, it was a really, really short-sighted idea.
Haha, short-sighted, referring to the sniper. Very funny, Lucid, good pun. Also, Jeremy is just a conduit for Lucid now. I know he probably was already, but this is just Lucid's moral scruples about playing sniper. Ruining fun, give me a break, no one cares.
But Jeremy knew that he had saved the best for last, as he switched to the class that he watched kill his heavy friend the most when they'd play together. The class that would finally allow him to win against Fitzcreek. Spy is the only class other than Scout whose design makes him excellent at blitzing the flag and trying to take it. Being able to go invisible and disguise oneself made him the ideal choice to attempt to make a run for it, not to mention that he was one of Engineer's main counters. He'd be able to use his sapper to take down Fitzcreek once and for all, and then make a break for the intel while everyone else was distracted. He was going to beat Fitzcreek once and for all.
I gotta say, that footage portrays quite a fortunate circumstance. I'm not saying it's ridiculously uncommon, but Jeremy is lucky that the Engineer is using the Wrangler because that makes sapping way easier. I'm not complaining about that, I'm just noting that it's quite fortunate.
He had done it. He had taken out his rival. It was time for Jeremy to get to the intel room, and finally, at last, capture the...
Well, he died. I guess his lessons to learn would be to disguise again after killing a guy and destroying a sentry gun, which I assumed was basic knowledge since even I figured that out in my first hour of Spy. Also, did he seriously not hear the sentry gun from outside the room? Because you can hear those things from as far away as the hallway. Why is Jeremy acting like such an idiot? Oh no.
Taken out his rival. It was time for Jeremy to get to the intel room, and finally, at last, capture the...
Yeah, where does disguise go?
No way.
Yes.
Undisguised. Where did disguise go?
The disguise was on the entire way down the stairs. The mask is on there.
He had taken
it's
out
there.
Into the intel
it was time for
there.
Jeremy to get to the intel.
The mask is on right here, and then suddenly,
finally,
inexplicably, it's
capture
gone, and he dies.
Okay, well, actually, we can play devil's advocate. Maybe he misinputted his right mouse button.
Okay, but at this point, he
would have indicated that in the story, though.
No, it doesn't even matter if he does or not, because the issue here is like, who cares? Who cares? The issue is like, instead of saying, oh shoot, I forgot to disguise, Lucid plays this off as, oh, this is so, oh my. This map's so bad, like, dude, you forgot to disguise.
No, it's not that he forgot to disguise. He was disguised and then suddenly wasn't, didn't notice, and ran right in.
That's the point. The point is that it's his fault. The point is that this could only be his fault. Yet it's treated like it's the game mode / map's fault. Like, bro. It's you just...
Because all engineer turtling in the intel room is so powerful. Why? Why was he disguised one frame and the next he wasn't? Why did he have to die? He had it, man. He could have listened for the sentry and sapped it while trying to get around the engineer with the revolver and pick him off while the NG tried to break the sapper. Oh, there could have been something here. Lucid, you don't need your character to act like this. Stop making him such an idiot. You try to form a relatable character, but his repeated stupidity and then his childish attitude afterwards, as if he expected the win to be easy, is just insufferable. Worse yet, you make new players in general look like idiots when a lot of them probably aren't. This is so hideous, and it's far more malicious than the fake sewer death from earlier. This clip doesn't even try to hide that Lucid has directly manipulated an otherwise realistic situation to function at Jeremy's detriment, because he cannot and will not let him achieve victory. It preys on the incompetence of the audience to assume that Jeremy has just had the final straw when absolutely none of that should be happening at all. This is so embarrassing. Please let the nightmare end soon.
Jeremy had had enough. He was done trying to beat back the red team. He knew that any chance he had to take down the enemy was over.
He doesn't know that at all. This entire video, he's been slowly progressing to the point of getting closer and closer, and this could very easily be turned into a victorious narrative about how he learned from his mistakes yet again, overcame the engineer in the room, took the flag and captured it. This could be a huge learning moment for him, and instead he just gives up? Jeremy's a quitter. What kind of story is this?
You've basically won Capture the Flag.
No, you haven't! You could have sapped or rushed still, as you literally proved earlier just by playing spy for what, the first time ever?
Jeremy was defeated.
Oh, cry about it to someone who cares, you pathetic quitter.
Instead of beating them, he would join them. Playing engineer in CTF wasn't hard. It wasn't fun. It wasn't even all that helpful. But it was victory. If Jeremy couldn't win, he'd make sure no one would ever capture the flag again.
What a spiteful jerk. What a great and relatable character. Nihilism wins in the end, I suppose. Such is the state of the weak-minded and feeble of spirit.
Hey, is that Fitzkrieg? Unbeknownst to Jeremy, Fitz was auto-balanced to the blue team shortly after they fought, just as Jeremy had been earlier that same match. Now they were no longer rivals. They were teammates. And they had both decided to puppy guard the flag, in the intel room, by themselves. Jeremy thought about his rivalry with Fitz, his determination to win, his ever-present desire to capture the flag. And he realized none of that was nearly as fun as the time he spent with the Heavy. Weirdly enough, the most fun he had in Capture the Flag was when he was avoiding the flag at all costs. Just hanging out with his new friend and trying to find the stupidest ways to kill the enemy team. That was fun. Running his head at a brick wall and trying to beat this engineer wasn't fun at all. And as Jeremy watched his former rival build a sentry nest in the intel room, he realized that the most fun he had wasn't because of the game itself. It was because of the people that he played with. As Jeremy thought back to his Heavy friend, he knew what would bring Fitz the most joy. So he put down his weapons, and he gave his former rival the friend that he wished was still here.
Sentimental, heartwarming, and dumb as bricks. Both Jeremy and Fitz now guard the same intel room, and Jeremy has a coming-to-Jesus moment when he remembers that the most fun he had was when he wasn't playing the game. He lists things he does, but doesn't give a reason as to why they're fun or why he found it enjoyable. He just did. This is now the objective basis for Lucid's criticisms against CTF as a game mode. It's not meant to be played, it's meant to be played, you see, because that's fun, objectively. Facing a challenge and learning more about the nuances of interclass combat by attempting to take this engineer down? No, that's not fun. That's running ahead into a brick wall. It wasn't the gameplay, it was the friends he made along the way. Oh my gosh, he actually tied that in. He's literally said it's not about the destination, but the friends made along the way. Wow. Also, how did he know what Fitz wanted? He might not have wanted that at all. He might have been actually trying to play the game, so I guess Jeremy is just really lucky. How very convenient that he assumed someone would think exactly like him, and that it just so happened to work. But don't you see, Snake? The reason why Jeremy can reasonably come to this conclusion is because playing the game isn't fun. Making friends and doing anything other than the objective, that's fun. So of course, everyone else would think like him, because in this world, everyone agrees that fun is the only thing that matters. How is that defined? How is that objectively quantified? Who cares? We're just here to have fun. And as long as you don't capture that flag, that's all you need to do to have fun.
Yes! Thank you! Or should I say no thank you? Because in opposite world, maybe that really means thank you.
Oh, this is so horribly insufferable and misleading. I can barely take it anymore. There's 4 minutes left. I can do this.
This is what Capture the Flag is. It's not a game mode about two teams fighting for dominance to see who's better. It's not competitive. It's not serious. It's a game mode about friendships and rivalries. A game mode where lifelong connections are made between players. Where memories are made.
No, it isn't. It's a game mode where two teams compete to capture flags. People not completing the objective does not represent a flaw with the game mode. That's a choice of the people to not play the game. And don't redefine playing the game to mean anything but actually completing the designed objective to complete. That's so disgustingly disingenuous. Again, with the asinine friends we made along the way idea, that's not part of the game mode, and it shouldn't be conflated as such. At best, it's a happy side effect as a result of just playing the game, but that could happen on literally any other game mode. And it's not that people on other game modes would be too busy playing the game to make friends. I've made more friends playing other game modes than I have in CTF. It's not inherent in CTF, and it's certainly not what makes it special on an objective level. This type of experience is strictly person to person. And sure, I'm probably letting my emotion get the better of me. I'm perfectly aware that a game of CTF can be a social and competitive experience simultaneously. It's what makes games nowadays feel so sterile, after all, the lack of fusion between the two. But that's not what's happening here, and that's certainly not the element that Lucid has been trying to build up and glorify over the course of his video. He has vilified or ignored every aspect of amicable competition in almost every circumstance possible. It can only be one or the other, friends or gaming. He didn't even try to talk about team play in an honest way in terms of achieving the objective laid out by the game. He makes Capture the Flag out to be this pseudo-mystical experience of friendship and wonder, when it objectively is not that. Mechanically, it is exactly what I described earlier. What more can be derived from it is down to the person, I suppose, but coupled with the mountain of misrepresentation rampant throughout this video, Lucid certainly doesn't merit the benefit of the doubt with his platitudes here.
The first ever friend I ever made on Steam, ever, was a guy that I met on 24/7 2Fort, and it was just a guy, me and him, chilling, building sentries and spawn, not doing anything at all, and because we weren't doing anything, we just talked and chat.
That's nice.
The experience I've had, and that I'm sure all the other 2Fort lovers have had, is enjoying a match where you make a personal nemesis of someone on the other team and spend a ton of time going back and forth targeting each other, either dueling or just seeing who leaves the game first.
Sure, I guess. I don't know what this proves exactly. What, the 2Fort and CTF in general is just a Gmod server or something? What did Lucid say, web phishing? I suppose that's down to the person, but that doesn't prove anything about CTF as a game mode. These experiences are completely subjective, and it's perfectly fine to have those, but you can't project them onto the game mode and make the case that because you and others have had these experiences, therefore the game mode is something that it provably is not. Though, according to the addendum, this doesn't seem to be what Richter means, so I might be looking too far into it after a long video of falsehoods. My skepticism is probably getting the better of me here. Also, speaking of the addendum, for once, this clip isn't taken out of context. The addendum's elaboration of this point is simply sharing specifics of particular experiences that can be had. Thank God for that.
For the first, I don't know how much exactly, but at least several hundred hours, I played exclusively on 2Fort. You know, my first learning experiences with TF2 were through 2Fort.
And we talked about our favorite YouTubers. We were both into like top 10 gaming videos at the time. And the first comment ever left on my profile is made by him. And I still remember him. And we're still friends to this day.
I mean, there's no arguing against this because there's nothing to argue. This is just a sharing of personal experiences. Cool, I suppose, but I wish it would have been supported with a better video. I'd take them a lot more seriously if that was the case.
Truthfully, CTF is the DNA TF2 was born of. And you're really not a TF2 player if you haven't played and enjoyed Capture the Flag.
What Richter actually said was this.
Anything else to add? I think the general hatred people have for CTF reflects a lot of different things that don't really have anything to do with its supposedly abysmal design. It reflects a long-growing distaste for the types of classes that thrive in CTF, like Sniper. It reflects a deep conflict in TF2's identity as a game. It's just plain weird to play a game that's giving you round limits and calling itself a competition, while also putting you in lobbies that go on forever and kind of feel like trade servers. I suspect many players who dog on CTF simply played a lot of it when they first started playing TF2 and associate it with their younger years, and they feel like they should shun that experience so they can show they've grown into a more mature TF2 player. But truthfully, CTF is the DNA TF2 was born of, and you're really not a TF2 player if you haven't played and enjoyed Capture the Flag. I mean, what even is Team Fortress 2 without 2 Fort? If you subtract the letters, you're just left with Team RIS. I don't know about you, but that sounds lame as hell to me. And hey, it's not like Manpower was any better.
What I find most interesting is that the testimonies of all these YouTubers are tacked onto Lucid's conclusion about CTF not being a game mode with a focus on competition, but connection. But with Richter's full context here, this wasn't even what Richter was saying. He notes that there's been a cultural shift in the attitude the game mode is looked upon now, and across the entire addendum, it is quite evident that Richter's main point is that it's largely the fault of Valve for mishandling the game as a whole, with CTF just happening to take the largest hit. With that context in mind, the statement about CTF being the DNA of TF2 makes much more sense. Heck, even the enjoyment remark has more credibility now. As a result of outlining his thoughts so clearly, Richter is basically saying that it would be quite hasty to call oneself a TF2 fan without experiencing the very fundamental that the game was built on. Even historically, this is true, as CTF was the first game mode built for the original Quake Team Fortress. 2 Fort has survived the franchise's history since the start, and to not be capable of experiencing CTF for what it ought to be is an abysmal shame, and as Richter has correctly pointed out in the addendum, this is Valve's fault. But Lucid has not once illustrated this fact. He hasn't even approached the subject in any capacity. As a result, it makes Richter's statement come off as a hollow sentiment piece that bears no weight to any arguments outside of bolstering false emotional payoff at the very end of the video. This is a decision in video essays that I can only describe as scummy. To ignore the overarching point of your friend, take pieces of his statements that sound completely different by themselves, and tack them onto points that were hardly ever being made. That is, for lack of any better words, utterly pathetic.
You join a CTF server on 2 Fort. You have like 4 snipers in the same spot that everyone always is, the stupid upper bit with the snipers. And then meanwhile, like, this dumbass heavy is riding a go-kart across the bridge. It's very Team Fortress 2, I think.
Very Team Fortress 2. Goofing off and not playing the game is the legacy the game leaves behind. I suppose this ties in with the meme about the game doubling as a hat simulator, but nobody seems to think that this is unfortunate. What's the rationale for this? Can someone actually define for me in clear terms what it means to be Team Fortress 2? Wouldn't that be subjective at this point in the video anyway?
I have an old replay, like, posted on YouTube I could show you from, like, 2011 from me on 2 Fort.
Oh, really?
You want to see that?
I would love to see that. That sounds awesome.
Gotta look at little newbie me.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Cool.
This game mode represents the essence of Team Fortress 2. The way the game's characters, gameplay, and atmosphere cause players to interact with one another is, in my opinion, the best part about the game. A relic of a bygone era where online games weren't for competition, but for connection.
Whoa there, I heavily disagree with that last sentence. I don't know much about the older generation of gamers, but from the fellows I've talked to in person and online, connection was made through competition. Part of the nature of sports, especially as an element of classical masculinity, is that connection is formed through performing tasks at high efficiency. This is what makes games like team-based shooters so engaging for a male audience. It takes a masculine duty like warfare and sets it as both a cooperative and competitive context, in the sense that you are cooperating with a team and competing against another team. And no, I'm not saying that women can't experience the same thing. I am simply pointing out that this phenomenon happens more commonly with men due to programming. And every gamer older than me has spoken on this and noted that the best friends they made were the people they played the hardest with. If anything, the bygone era is what I've just described, because what Lucid is describing is not a relic of anything. This, the dopamine-addled, low-effort, immediate gratification culture, is the norm without a shadow of a doubt. The age of healthy competition and making friends through that competition is the bygone era, not the age of casual hedonism.
The story of Capture the Flag in TF2 isn't one written by the developers through lore or cutscenes or anything like that. It's a story written in every match by the players themselves. Rivalries, arcs, battles, friendships, all constructed in the chaotic battlefield of Capture the Flag. A mode that might be designed badly for competition, but one that's perfectly designed for connection.
Whoa, the story of CTF is the story you make for yourself. So deep, so esoteric. So flaccid and lame. You could have tried harder with your sentimentality, but you didn't. It's cliche and frankly insulting to dumb the intelligence of your own audience down to this. You should be ashamed of yourself, Lucid. And no, CTF is not designed badly for competition. It's designed just fine. People have convinced themselves not to care, through influence or through poor self-constructed philosophies.
Because winning isn't always the reason why we play games. Sometimes a good game is about having a good time with some good friends. Because a memory captured is more important than any flag could ever be.
It's not about the objective, but the friends and memories we made along the way. That is fun. That is Team Fortress 2. What do you even say to someone like that, man?
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe, like, and comment below. It's the most helpful thing you guys can do to help this video get shown to as many people as possible. This was a massive undertaking, and I definitely want to do more videos like this if you guys want to see it. Thank you to everyone who helped me with working on this video. You guys all did a wonderful job, so thank you so much. And thank you, dear viewer, for watching this all the way through. It truly means the world. Anyways, see you all next time. Same place, same time, and as always, stay tuned and stay lucid. Bye-bye.
Stay lucid. That's cute. Well, if you do make more videos like this, Lucid, please refrain from using your opinions and philosophies that rely exclusively on subjectivity as a foundation for your video. It makes you look inept. I know you're smarter than this, and yet you made this video, and unfortunately, it's very well received. Perhaps it's a testament to how easy the TF2 community is wooed. What no updates for 8 years does to a game. But at long last, the video is over. How do I even begin to summarize a catastrophe such as this? This YouTube video was a disaster. The narrative through line was an excuse to tell a story that made no coherent sense and could barely follow logical through lines of human behavior. It bent to the will of Lucid's agenda that CTF is a poorly designed game mode without ever actually explaining why CTF was poorly designed in the first place. Criticisms that were made can be attributed to casual mode, player-to-player decisions that are entirely subjective, or genuine skill issues. The only criticism that stood out as objectively founded was map design, but even that didn't work because he didn't bother to quantify how big was too big, how small is too small, and how CTF maps should be designed. Some YouTubers have actually taken to trying to figure out what all these terms mean, and believe me, their fixed maps are utterly horrendous. They undermine the role of certain classes to the point of making sure they're impossible to play, and believe me, that's intentional, while also making the routes so convoluted to avoid funneling people that it winds up being impossible to defend because there's no way to cover all the areas at once without team coordination. The very thing that people choose not to do because that's not what makes CTF good. In an effort to make CTF more engaging for the objective, they fail to even achieve that because people are already so desensitized to the idea of CTF being bad in principle. The testimonies from other YouTubers in this video were all utterly worthless. Everything was either a claim with no backing or elaboration, a reference to casual failures, skill issues, subjective opinions, and platitudes. The scrupulosity against playing the game is so intense to the point where people are saying it is literally TF2 to just not play the game. A game made by people who really cared about making engaging gameplay has been thoroughly undermined by hedonists and self-fulfilling losers that insist on redefining the game as anything but what was developed and intended in its design. It is subversion to the highest order, and of course, they all cover for each other.
And even, like, Zesty Jesus, like, is a really smart, just like a smart guy, okay? He's, like, really talented. And he was involved in the production, like, he would have at least had to have had some involvement in that. Aside from all the quick play that, like, people give him, it's like, why? How did he not see anything wrong with that?
Maybe he didn't pay attention either. He maybe just did it as a favor and didn't care himself. I don't know. Just as a side note, do any of you remember Lucid mentioning how he discussed the history of the game mode and how he brought up that Quake Team Fortress footage? He didn't discuss the history of the game mode at all, unless one would count the brief instance where he mentions the flag becomes the intelligence and completely lies about the contents of the intelligence. What was worse, however, was the blatant ways in which Lucid deemed it necessary to take RichterOvertime out of context. Say what you will about the man, but there is no reason Lucid needed to misrepresent him this obtusely. I'm surprised Lucid even uploaded the addendum, considering how much it exposes himself as a fraud. The rest of the cast wound up being worthless. Lister complained, Zesty complained even more, and Junko Kitty is a YouTuber with a tiny following that I can only assume is in this video because he's been on Lucid's podcast. The man doesn't even have a TF2 video on his YouTube channel. He makes web fishing content. Yet here he is, featuring in a TF2 video where he can't remember the name of Turbine, can't be bothered to give realistic scenarios, and sounds half drunk and half bored to tears whenever he complains. Even at the end, where people are saying relatively positive things, he's still complaining about unrealistic scenarios and says that it's very TF2. What does that even mean? Wheezy was by far the most forgettable guest in this video, and his flaws are the same as everyone else's. The editing of this video is a nightmare. Everything from stupid errors like the mouse showing up on screen twice and a pause button from his editing software, right down to the manipulation of events in-game that should have played out in the opposite fashions as they did.
Please don't make fun of it.
Also, the little pause button down in the bottom from the demo is really funny.
That's pretty bad.
Because it'll disappear later.
Dude, that's not from the demo. That's not what it looks like on the demo playback. This is just his own recording software. I put that.
I think if it was the demo playback, it would like have like its own.
This is
oh
him,
right, it does.
This is literally him. This is him recording something, playing back a demo.
Oh my gosh, that's even worse. That means that this happened in the editing phase, and he allowed it to get through.
I don't know where this pause button's coming from.
You could have just cropped the video to not include the pause button, and it would have been okay.
You could have. It is the only way you would get a pause button here for this. I would think is if you're literally, you know, Discord. You can stream like an individual browser tab, like an individual tab, or your whole screen. It'd be like if you're recording your whole screen, you're recording your whole screen of a video you already recorded. So you recorded yourself pressing play for some reason. That's the only way you would get this, is recording a recording. Like, what the why are you recording the recording? Just use the original video you recorded. I don't understand.
Awkward.
Where do you get this? Where is this button coming from? Where do you get this?
Reaching the flag is often near impossible, because the objective of capture the flag.
He didn't even say that it was impossible earlier. He's just like, it is. Oh look, there's a mouse on the screen.
Now it's impossible.
Now the mouse on the screen. Hold on.
There's a mouse on the screen.
Ooh, mouse!
It also, here's the other mouse. The other mouse is coming up.
Really gay.
The anti-aliasing, it's so cringe.
The mouse is in the top left corner.
Dude, the blur line in the middle of the screen.
Oh yeah, the blur line is back.
What is happening?
It looks like the blur line is focused on the top quarter of the screen.
Why?
It's not even centered.
More attention to the poor anti-aliasing.
Oh my gosh, it's not even centered on the screen. Oh, it's because it has to focus on Jeremy's face for like 10 frames.
Mouse.
Most egregiously, the sewer explosion and the ending spy clip are direct examples of Lucid forcing the story to bend to his agenda. it is very evident that Lucid doesn't want Jeremy to experience any of the positive benefits of Capture the Flag. For what it's worth, I consider the abysmal editing job quite a shame, since I can tell there was at least an attempt at being at least visually entertaining. There are some editing tricks I was genuinely impressed by, while also having scenes that make no sense at all in relation to the context of the game. Like, whenever convenient, the map is just empty, and I can't tell if this is just to forward the agenda, or if he just genuinely forgot to make the server seem realistically full. On top of that, the backgrounds of the interviews just being random simplified letters scrolling down just looks stupid. I know that sounds like a nitpick, but my goodness, some interlacing TF2 symbols would have made more sense. Heck, if he had just thrown up a tessellating image of the intelligence, that would have made more sense thematically. On the subject of logic, Lucid has made no attempt to be honest, coherent, consistent, logical, or even factual in his video whatsoever. Any attempt at even making factual statements is immediately undermined because he has to stick to his narrative and his absolutely retarded scruples about how CTF isn't actually designed to be played seriously at all. Is it because it relies upon people to actually play just like any other game mode? Does he even try to talk about how other game modes possibly don't suffer from this as much, like payload and attack defend? Or that other game modes suffer more than CTF from these issues, like payload race? No, not really. The only time he mentions other game modes outright is in the section on map design, and even that is undermined by how certain game modes don't actually have as many avenues for other classes to function the way he says they do. For example, he talks about Demoman not being able to defend a significant number of flanks like in Koth maps, despite that varying from map to map. For my part, I'd argue that Viaduct doesn't have a significant number of flanks at all, since it's basically 2 mains and 2 sides, with only one of them vaguely working as a flank, I suppose. But then there's Badlands with actual flanks, but then there's Megaton, which is so open the whole map winds up being a flank, but also Harvest, which is its own thing. See, there's a ton of variability and nuance and contexts to discuss that Lucid won't even bother bringing up, because the slightest scrutiny throws the idea that this video represents anything sensible or cognitively appealing completely out the window. To elaborate on my thoughts regarding map design further, and more specifically in regard to particular complaints made by the YouTubers regarding class placements within the maps, CTF map design remains fairly consistent in that the middle areas are quite large and open for maximum fighting agency for all classes. There are several areas leading up to the flag room where skirmishes can occur to either deter a run on or an escape with the flag. The flag room itself is the primary point of the stronghold. The very construction makes it clear that you're in what is essentially the heart of the fortress. It takes work to get to that point, and it is the highest priority point to defend. Naturally, as engineer is the class designed to best defend the flag, he will place his sentry there. Now, the criticism arises that too many engineers can sit in one spot with their sentries defending an item. Junko Kitty brought up 7 engineers at one point. I know he may be speaking in hyperbole, but let's take that claim seriously for a moment, since it technically can happen in a casual or standard rule set game. TF2 offers players the option to choose whatever class they want, regardless of how many people are already playing that class. This is a default option on servers as it gives players maximum agency and an exertion of free will. This is not a design flaw, but actually a strength depending on how the opposing team wants to approach it. Stacking on defensive classes decreases offensive power, thus becoming more vulnerable to it. For example, if all 7 engineers stacked sentry guns in the flag room of 2 Fort, this can be completely dismantled with as little as 2 medics with uber charge, a demo man, and a heavy. The heavy can focus on killing all the engineers first while the demo man deals with the guns, and by the time all the engineers are dead, half the guns are either dismantled or at least severely damaged. Heck, I've even seen games where 2 medics with stock and Kritzkrieg can charge 1 demo man or heavy, and even the most formidable of defenses are just turned to dust. I know that people will say it's too hard to combat 7 engineers turtling in an intel room, but they are technically exercising 2 elements the game provides them: free will and casual teamwork. It is technically speaking an act of teamwork to do the same thing 6 other people are doing, and further strengthen their duty as the defense class. So surely, if 7 people can do that quite easily, then 4 people, or even fewer if they know what they're doing, can dismantle that entire layer of defense. I've tried explaining this to people before, and they genuinely think I'm being ironic because it's just TF2, bro, or it's just 2 Fort, it's not that deep. But I mean what I say here. If you are faced with the challenge of teamwork, combat it with teamwork. If you're not willing to do that, perhaps you shouldn't be playing this game. TF2 is not a game exclusively designed to suit individualistic and self-centered play. It is still, at its core, a team game, and for as ridiculous of an example of this principle as it is, engineers stacking on top of a flag is teamwork. Perhaps the counter could be as simple as stacking Spy or Demoman, depending on how the solution can be approached, but the game was designed to accommodate for this. And by nature of the team's resources being diverted so far to engineers, there is significantly less strength dedicated towards capturing the enemy flag. Assuming the enemy team knows this, which isn't too far of a stretch to think about after enough time in the server, they can spread their resources more evenly. Set one engineer in the flag room, and maybe he doesn't need to even stay in the room. Send two medics out, perhaps with differing Uber charges, with a soldier and a demoman, or a demoman and a heavy. This isn't such a difficult concept to understand, and having to explain that teamwork should be countered with teamwork probably means that people are suffering from a skill issue when they say that flag defenses in CTF are unreasonably difficult to dismantle. Though of course Jeremy isn't allowed to ever figure that out in the story. He never asks his team to help him capture the flag at all, nor does any of his teammates ask for his assistance at any point during his 3-hour play session somehow. Jeremy is so narrow-minded in the story Lucid has constructed that he will not ask for help or teamwork whatsoever, despite playing a game with team in the name. Additionally, I'm not sure what Zesty meant by spreading players too thin, as that's kind of a personal choice on the players themselves to separate from each other and not function as a team, but I do understand that there is a range of acceptable outcomes that maps nowadays seem to exceed. 2 Fort specifically is quite large in its scope, but it's designed to have areas that easily contain groups of players and make the direction quite clear. Other maps like Applejack arguably give players too many pathways, causing too many divisions in teamwork when attacking the flag. I would say that communication is more important on maps like those, as the possible avenues for capture are increased, but I accept the range of acceptable outcomes in terms of map design. And finally, the title and overall premise of the video itself, the untold story of TF2's Capture the Flag. Throughout this video, Lucid tells the story of a player who represents the untold story of TF2's Capture the Flag game mode, when the story he truly left untold was the most realistic one. A story in which, at some point in his time playing with the Heavy, someone on either team captured a flag even once to achieve critical damage for a short time. This could have provided Jeremy an incentive to move for the flag yet again, eager to achieve an advantage for his team. He could have moved in to capture the flag with his Heavy friend after earning enough trust with him to where he knew the Heavy would follow. And this element truly is what is lacking most in this Team Fortress 2 video. Teamwork. Jeremy had all the time in the world to initiate teamwork, or be roped into an act of genuine teamwork beyond mindless fragfests. At some point, something he did with someone could have actively resulted in progress being made towards the goal of the game. And he could have felt good knowing that he was having fun with his friend and working to capture the flag at the same time. There was so much time where both desires could have been simultaneously fulfilled. But is that the story we're told? No. Jeremy is not allowed to experience Capture the Flag in even a plausibly middle-of-the-road way, let alone a positive way. Instead, he deceives himself into believing that not playing the game is the best way to play because of a feeling. Ironically, the original title of this script was Lucid Does Not Want You to Capture the Flag. While I was referring to the viewer at the time in a somewhat post-ironic fashion, I realize now that the title fits better with Jeremy himself, and that is something I can only define as a twisted irony. Lucid thrusts his own viewpoint upon his character without even a sliver of an honest attempt at presenting gameplay as conducive to anything other than satisfying an indescribable feeling. And apparently that feeling is all that playing games is for. Games, to Lucid, are merely to satisfy a base desire for mindless and vague fun with parameters that change on the whim of whosoever believes that fun is being intruded upon. This presents not only a character, but an author as well, who possesses a weak logical and possibly ethical framework in regards to viewing entertainment and the purposes of what is presented. I actually have a whole section dedicated to this phrase. You'll see that at some point.
You'll see.
Wait,
what was the thing you said before? I was half paying attention.
Jeremy's not having fun, and he wants to win. Isn't that what playing games is for?
I mean, I mean, having fun is what people play games for. Winning and having fun aren't like exactly the same. You could still have fun and not win the round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're making an honest effort to like play the game and stuff.
If you're just playing the game, that's having fun. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. If you don't have fun and you lose, the game is dog shit.
But then to be fair, this is where you have to define like this is where like you have to either agree that fun is perfectly subjective or that there's an objective line in which certain actions are not acceptable as reasonable to complain about. For example, if you can somehow make the argument that friendlies play the game, but then they don't have fun because other people are trying to capture the flag and like move on to the next map, you can't honestly say that they're playing the game and they're not, like, their complaints about not having fun are pointless because that the game mode is not designed to accommodate friendlies. It is designed to capture flags. And at that point, it doesn't matter whether they're having fun or not. They can go bellyache to someone who cares. And like and he never accounts for this because he's a hyper subjectivist. He's a relativist about this sort of thing, and it's really bothersome because it's you either have to agree.
He doesn't account this because he does not care about the truth. He just wants to like make everyone.
He just wants to complain.
What makes the game fun is generally if you're playing the game the way it's intended and you're enjoying it, that is you having fun.
Yeah.
So.
He's gonna be like, oopsie days, CTF sucks because it's not fun.
I don't know how to define fun though, so what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Technically, you just can't define fun at all. Fun
that's
is just
okay. That's a normal person's response to that. But by saying what playing games is for is either winning or having fun, by drawing that line in the sand by saying Jeremy wants to win, isn't that what playing games is for? He has drawn a line in the sand about winning or having fun are two completely different things, and one is the right way to have fun, and one is the wrong way to have fun. And you cannot, if you believe that fun is subjective, purely subjective, which it is, you cannot honestly argue that because that is not the definition of fun. It is impossible to make that case. And anyone who says that they can is lying to you. Because the only other option is that you have to agree that fun is objectively quantifiable, or that there is an acceptable range of outcomes in which fun is permissible to have under certain conditions.
Having more fun, like if a game is designed really well, then it does lead to fun.
It leads to a higher chance of that occurring. But if we agree that fun is purely subjective, it's person to person anyway. For example, you could play the greatest. I could play the greatest RPG in existence. I don't like RPGs as a genre. I prefer action, like racing games and shooters. I don't like RPGs. So even if it was the greatest one ever made, I wouldn't have as much fun with it as someone who plays RPGs most of the time. It is purely person to person, and you have to distinguish that. And he doesn't. No one on the YouTube scene ever does, and that's the whole reason why people think that Sniper is overpowered, because it's literally based on this misunderstood like truth about the definition of fun, and it pisses me off because it's like the most basic level of intellectually dishonest, and they can't see themselves for what they are.
The only reason why people say Sniper is unbalanced is because it doesn't feel fair to die to.
Even still, feelings are subjective. You have to quantify this, and nobody quantifies it. You cannot base a whole argument off of it doesn't feel right. And that's half this CTF video anyway, it's just feels. If any of you watching this breakdown supported Lucid before, please do not support him anymore. He has not earned the reputation he holds in the TF2 world, and this video is a miserable stain upon the craft of video creation as a whole. From poor editing, to a lazy script, to motifs that seem to force their way down the throats of the viewer, this video cannot possibly be considered as anything other than an unrelenting travesty in terms of the representation it provides to any of the subjects it discusses. He should be ashamed for even posting this on YouTube, and for the sake of his betterment as a content creator, I certainly hope he is. Because at the end of the day, what I want you, the viewer, to understand is that at some point, especially in the TF2 world, they who control the consensus through their online clout will, at some point, lie. There is always a belief they hold about the game that they deem to be factual and true when it is provably not. And this video, while not high-performing by any means, stands as a vivid reminder that terrible content exists and can still influence anyone who comes across it into believing something that does not align with reality. When I was new to this game, I was influenced by many videos like Lucid, and I went into the game as a brand new player thinking that people on YouTube had to be right, otherwise why would they be so popular? But then I watched more and more videos and realized the mountains of contradictions between creators, and I realized that I was looking at everything wrong. I had to reassess everything I came to know about the game, and now I agree with very little that is produced nowadays, simply from the standpoint that there is always the acceptance of a false fundamental at some point. What I want, and hope, as a result of this response video I've made, is for people to hold their favorite creators accountable. Try to rationalize what is being said, compare it to your own experience, then draw yourself out of the equation, and try to observe the experience as a whole. Run through every possible context in which actions can occur, and draw logical conclusions based on the information you have access to, through no more than a simple search on the game's wiki. If need be, even some unorthodox measures can be taken to understand the facts of the matter. Cheats were never my first option to verify particular pieces of Lucid's video, mostly because I didn't think the video would get that bad, but they greatly benefited the overall analysis by proving that certain events were simply impossible to occur. As far as my role on YouTube in regards to TF2, I'd much rather be the guy that holds people accountable, who can present absolute clarity in subjects where people would much rather benefit from lying to their audiences because it either performs better for their bottom line or is simply easier to create. I certainly will never intend to lie to the audience, but if I ever fall short of outlining the facts appropriately, I hope my own audience can hold me accountable as they have in the past. The comment section is probably my greatest blessing as a YouTuber in that regard. Lucid, though by far not the most popular or notorious of TF2 YouTube by a long shot, is a microcosm of an overarching problem in the sphere, namely that people misrepresent the game at any chance to suit their personal biases and pass it off as fact. I don't know where he got the nerve or stupidity to post something like this, but hopefully this response has provided sufficient evidence to show that just because you have a large enough following that will eat up anything you post doesn't make you right. For the fan base, demand better from the people you watch. You do not need to be misrepresented in such uncharitable fashions as what Lucid has portrayed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. This is by far my most ambitious undertaking yet, and it only looks to get crazier from here. My formal response and review of the 2 fort redesigns created by Great Blue and Shonik have been put on indefinite hold in favor of more important projects. As for what's coming next, viewers of this channel know that I've talked about 2 more videos before potentially quitting TF2 content as a whole and moving on to better games and more fulfilling creative endeavors. Depending on how these videos perform, that could change, as I have been having a lot of fun rediscussing TF2 elements with some friends of mine. That watch-through of the Lucid video I conducted with those 3 friends was recorded in its entirety and can be found on my second channel. Ordinarily, the second channel is a place for me to spill my thoughts in an unfiltered fashion without a script, but it can also be to archive videos like this. In the future, we want to do more videos like that. Presently, we are merely recording our Discord sessions, but hopefully the resources to live stream the discussions become available, as I understand that format to be more suitable for the viewing experience. I apologize for the delay with this particular video. I had every intention of getting this completed much sooner, before Advent actually, but I actually got married in early December 2025, so with the planning leading up to that, the following honeymoon, and the Christmas and New Year's festivities, I was unable to do much of any work on this video for a good 2 months. Hopefully it was worth the wait. Thank you for your patience. Finally, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the people who helped me make this video. This video would absolutely have been worse and possibly never released if I did not receive the counsel and appropriate criticisms from the people who watched and read through the several drafts of this video. So thank you to my father and my newlywed wife for reading the script and keeping me encouraged throughout the 4-month process of creating this video. Thank you to Phoenix for proofreading my script in its later stages. And a special thank you to my friends Eminem, Alex, and Pikachu Frankie, who watched the video with me and helped me discover even more wrong things with the video than I could have figured out on my own. Pikachu Frankie in particular sent me nearly 10 pages of criticisms regarding the first major draft of this script, so an extra special thanks for his assistance there. He can be found on YouTube as Kritzkrieg Killers, and Alex can be found on YouTube as Slippy. Links to their channels will be in the description. And of course, a big thanks to Jorge and Sundermore for the cheat software footage. Your contribution was immensely helpful to me. But for now, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Anyways, yeah, that was Kino Cinema, Alex and Eminem. What did you guys?
Why do you even need to make that video? Is my question.
I don't know. I don't even know.
Like, this could be summed up with like one blog post. Like, it's not about the whatever. Like, why did you need a whole video for this?
Ad revenue.
Let alone
he needs
30
that money.
Minutes. Let alone 30 minutes of him just repeating himself and making up stories.
And lying, and then changing, the story on the fly to suit his perspective.
Yeah.
We need to do this. What's more? We need to make this a podcast where we just do what we just watch bad TF2 videos. This is perfect.
There's plenty of them. Simply existing in the gamescape. Woo! But this class should be technically an incredible foil for Kritzfeeg. Kitzfreeg, what? You could have tried harder with your sentimentality, but you didn't. It's cliche and frankly, oof. I don't even know where I got that. It's cliche and frankly again! I stepped away for 5 minutes to take a break and then I make the same mistake.
So why do we have to get the flags? What does it do? Seems kind of pointless to me, man. Is it? I like killing people. Well, man, this game mode has no time limit. I'm only here to kill people, man. I don't see any reason to end it quicker. Okay, but I like this game and I want to kill people. Okay, I don't care.
The enemy has taken our
It's the primary point for me. I'm here to kill people.
The enemy has dropped our intelligence.